The Legend of the Ninja from the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, Crisis at the Border. Well, let's stop here for the self-introduction. Yi-Shan took out an exquisite clock from his arms. In order to save more time, let's briefly discuss the combat meeting before the start of this mission. Okay. Everyone responded in unison and listened attentively. This mission is to go to the northern border area. We will mainly patrol on guard. Yi-Shan reminded them seriously. Now the war in which the Atosaga coalition invaded our Konoha has just ended. The ninjas of other countries will definitely not let go of this god-given opportunity so easily. Captain, what you said makes sense. Tikuno nodded in agreement. So, Captain, which route should we take next to reach the northern border faster? Guji raised this question. About this question, Yi-Shan took out a blueprint from his leg bag, spread it out in front of everyone, and pointed to it. We go from here. Mingshan and the other two team members looked closely and analyzed. Captain, we are going to follow the route of Adofu Street. Keep going up, past the fire temple on the way. Turn west to bypass the time-consuming and laborious rugged mountain road, and finally reach the northern border, right? Yes. Yi-Shan nodded. This way it takes the shortest time, and is relatively easy to walk. Then let's get going without delay. Tikuno said to everyone. Okay. The team of 4 people left the gate, and began to jump quickly in the woods. On a certain road, a yellow-haired boy was standing under the direction sign and muttering. Hey, Adofu Street, we still have to walk another 10 kilometers to get there? He scratched his head and complained. It's Adofu Street. A middle-aged white-haired uncle walking in front of the yellow-haired man pointed out casually. Listen to me, listen to me. The yellow-haired man trotted up to him excitedly. Listen to me, you lecherous immortal. TSK, didn't I tell you to call me Jiraiya? Jiraiya looked at this guy with a headache. Really, why is it the same as tomorrow? Such a powerful lecherous immortal would take me out to travel. It must be because of that, right? The yellow-haired man thought wildly. There is a large part of untapped potential hidden in my body, right? Where do you get the courage to think so? Jiraiya silently complained in his heart, and stared at this guy speechlessly. He was very heartless and happily spinning around, and asked Jiraiya while spinning. Hey, why did you choose me, you lecherous sage? Jiraiya pouted with a blank expression. TSK, that's because you are the Ninetales Jinchuriki. Otherwise, who would want to take you with them? However, such words were too hurtful to say out loud, and he knew it well enough, so there was no need to say it out loud to answer the yellow-haired man's questions. I used to take the 4th Hokage as a disciple. The guy lied to him in a hypocritical manner, and the interesting thing is that I found that you are very similar to him. He pretended to be casual while walking. Well, that's just it. I'm very similar to the 4th Hokage. However, the yellow-haired man was instantly shocked by his words. That guy should be able to eliminate. Jiraiya was about to breathe a sigh of relief. Wow. A sudden ghost draw frightened Jiraiya so much that he almost lost his soul. Great. The yellow-haired man raised his hands and ran past him, shouting, I understand. What's wrong? What do you understand? Jiraiya asked him in astonishment. Great, I'm very similar to the 4th Hokage, that's to say. The yellow-haired man excitedly turned around and shouted to him. My talent is almost the same as the 4th Hokage. Like a monkey, he jumped up and down. Sure enough, I'm a man who can become a Hokage. Great. Hey, where do you get the confidence to think so? Jiraiya silently complained in his heart, staring at this guy speechlessly, too lazy to say anything to him, and concentrate on getting on the road. Hey. The yellow-haired man jumped into the air, and when he was about to fall, he suddenly caught a glimpse of where he was going to land. Slow, don't. Puff. The moment his feet stepped on the ground, the yellow-haired man's whole body stiffened, and he couldn't laugh anymore. He let out a strange cry and jumped up. I stepped on dog shit. Jiraiya was completely defeated by him, and finally couldn't stand this guy anymore. So he scolded, "You just happen to have the same hair color and personality as the fourth Hokage. Damn, what did you say? Just as he was gritting his teeth, he stepped subconsciously. You old, confused, lecherous immortal. Puff. Wow, I stepped on it again. Ah. This guy's hopeless. Swish, swish. Not long after Menshin's team left, Sasuke also ran to the main entrance in a cup of tea. What is he doing? Gangziti watched Sasuke crush out of the door quickly, raising a cloud of dust. Before he could finish his sigh, he saw Han down the members of the 10th team running over, and subconsciously complained, "Hey, you are really drunk. Why are there so many people leaving the village in the middle of the day? The land of fire, the northern border. A standard team is patrolling quickly in the woods within the border. Captain, it's already noon. Should we go back to the outpost to rest?" One of the unmotivated ninjas lazily asked his leader. "Hold on a little longer. We are almost done with this area." The captain smiled and comforted his subordinates. "Hey, I really don't know when they will." Danger. Suddenly, a teammate beside him shouted and forced the complaining companion to his head down without saying anything. Whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, several shurikens flew over his head. Enemy attack. After he exclaimed, the captain anxiously ordered a team member with dark circles under his eyes behind him. "Yanshu, after you lead them to retreat from there, release a falcon to the village to alert the enemy. I will stay and delay the enemy to buy you time." "No, Captain." Yanshu refused. "If you want to go, let's go together. If this is an order, Yanshu." The captain did not allow him to object and said anxiously and resolutely, "Please, if we retreat together, then no one will be able to get away." "Yanshu." "Captain. Go." I understand. TSK, Pondo. What do you think?" There were 2 Iwagakure ninjas hiding somewhere in the woods. One of them was a tall and strong man. He looked at the fleeing Konoha patrol team and said to his companion with a helpless smile, "I told you not to throw the shuriken rashly and wait until you are sure before throwing it, but you didn't listen to me. Now look what happened." "Sorry Wenya." Pondo apologized ashamedly and analyzed and pondered. They seemed to be preparing to run away separately. "It's okay." Wenya generously stopped, telling him not to worry, and waved his arms behind him, shouting, "Don't let them run away, we'll chase them." Depressed, the public chapter 29 was blocked and locked again. Helpless, I don't know when it will be lifted. Chapter 177 Bell. Understood. Whoosh, whoosh. A large number of Iwagakure ninjas quickly shuttled out to chase. Swish, whoosh. Seeing that the team split into 2 halfway, they also split into 2 groups to chase. At this time, in a remote shrine somewhere, there was a naughty yellow-haired boy who kept shaking the thick green and white long cloth hanging in front of the shrine's worship hall, hitting the big bell on the green and white cloth, and making a series of crisp sounds. "If you don't stop now, you will be punished." Jiraiya had no way to deal with this guy. After muttering a few words, he sat down on the ground, took out a piece of emerald green yoken from his arms, wiped it a little, and then ate it. I said, "A lecherous sage." Huh. He turned his head. "What kind of student is the 4th Hokage?" The yellow-haired boy who had conjured 4 clones asked him curiously. "Well, he is gifted and learns things very quickly. Plus, as my disciple, his growth rate can be said to be quite amazing." Jiraiya boasted a little proudly. "Hey, Naruto, you are very lucky to have the honor of receiving my personal guidance." All the clones responded to him perfunctorily, with expressions of disbelief written directly on their faces. "Hey, are you doubting?" Jiraiya finished eating a whole piece of yoken and said slowly, "Only a good teacher can teach a good student." It was rare for him to say to him seriously, "A good teacher produces a good student. Isn't that natural?" Then let me ask you." Naruto asked him, "Sexy sage, who did you learn from?" "Me." Hearing this, Jiraiya said to Naruto generously, "The person who taught me was the 3rd Hokage." "Hey, old man." Yes, at that time, the 3rd Hokage was still very young. "3rd Hokage?" the Naruto said suspiciously at the same time. "Very young?" "Yes," Jiraiya said with a smile. "I was also in my youth at that time." "Youth?" The Naruto didn't stand well and leaned to the side. Bang, bang, bang. After the bursts of white smoke dissipated. Whoosh, boom. The yellow-haired man was hit on the back of his head by the big copper bell that suddenly fell. He stumbled and the green and white cloth wrapped around his whole body. He rolled down the steps and fell to the open space below the shrine. My body is tangled together. The yellow-haired man couldn't break free. He lay on the ground and cried to Jiraiya for help in a very depressed mood. Look, it's retribution. Jiraiya couldn't help but smile happily. Since you are learning from Kakashi, you should have practiced with that bell. Oh, that. Naruto remembered and said suddenly, I did it. However, when Jiraiya mentioned this, the yellow-haired man also recalled the equally tragic and unbearable experiences that happened during the practice in order to snatch the bell from Kakashi's hand. Of course, this tragedy was mainly caused by him. He quickly shook his head to filter out this unbearable tragic past, and then, the yellow-haired man curled his lips and said unhappily, that time, I was the only one tied to the wooden stake. It was very embarrassing. What, you too? Jiraiya heard this and said in surprise. Hey, you said so too? The yellow-haired man didn't understand what he meant by this. Huh? What do you mean by so too? Well, let's not talk about this for now. Don't lie on the ground yet. Jiraiya didn't intend to explain more and urged him, get up quickly and put the copper bell back to its original position. Hey, it's easy for you to say. The yellow-haired man struggled hard for a few times. This is very tight. It's hard to get rid of. Jiraiya heard this and just smiled and said nothing. He just watched him lying on the ground and playing tricks and suddenly recalled a scene that he hadn't thought about for a long time. In a training ground in Konoha, there are 2 bells. A middle-aged man holding 2 bells in his hand reminded the 3 students standing in front of him, I only have 2 in my hand, which means one person will lose and be tied to the wooden stake. The pale-faced boy standing in the middle of the 3 quietly said it for the teacher. Very good, you are worthy of being Orochimaru. The man praised him. Okay, then let's get started. Among the 3, the white-haired boy shouted to his teammates. With the ultimate goal of killing me, come and attack. He held the bells tightly in his palm. Swish, swish, swish. After he finished speaking, the 3 dispersed and hid, waiting for an opportunity to ambush. During the exercise, the white-haired boy fought fiercely to snatch the 2 bells from his teacher, but ultimately failed. Jiraiya, I won the bet with you. Among the 3, the girl with bright brown eyes and light yellow hair in the same team was fiddling with the bell in her hand proudly, shaking it to make a sound, and said happily to her companion, in the end, it was you who was tied to the wooden stake. Shut up for being so noisy. Jiraiya said to her unconvincedly, what is there to be proud of, you super washboard, Tsunade? What did you say, Jiraiya? When the young girl Tsunade heard him ridiculing and complaining about her, she grabbed Jiraiya's collar in anger and retorted, you damn pervert. The 2 of them were fighting with each other, which gave their teacher a headache, and he hurried to dissuade them. Alright, all of you just shut up. After separating the people, he said to the students, Tsunade and Orochimaru go back first. Got it? Hearing his words, Tsunade, who was still playing around, immediately let go of his hand. After responding to the teacher obediently, she made a face at Jiraiya and went home to rest with Orochimaru beside her. It was evening. You are really something. He taught Jiraiya speechlessly. How can a ninja always fall into such an obvious trap? Because you should learn a little from Orochimaru. Teacher Sarutobi, you always mention Orochimaru. It's so annoying. Jiraiya also protested to him dissatisfiedly. The transparent technique I used when I was peeping was no worse than his. Really? Sarutobi smiled bitterly and asked him, how powerful is the transparent technique you mentioned? So far, it has not been discovered. Jiraiya was afraid that the teacher would not believe it, so he emphasized it again. This is true. Well, since you have said this, then Sarutobi closed his eyes with a serious face and said deeply, next time I will follow you to see it. Hey, Jiraiya took a while to react and complained to the teacher in a very obscene way. It turns out that Sarutobi teacher is also a pervert. Thinking of this funny thing in his memory, Jiraiya couldn't help laughing out loud. Thanks to the book friend 2018121143355948 for the recommendation vote he cast the day before yesterday. Chapter 178 Fang Fang Street. A. The yellow-haired man who was hanging on the crossbeam of the worship hall and playing with the bell turned around when he heard his laughter and asked, "What's the matter?" Swish, he jumped down from the top very swiftly and ran to Jiraiya. "What's the matter? So funny, lecherous immortal?" the yellow-haired man asked him. "Yeah." Jiraiya suddenly rubbed the man's head happily for no reason. "So, only a good teacher can teach a good disciple." Naruto looked at him in confusion. "I don't understand what you are talking about." "Okay, I'm leaving." Jiraiya didn't explain to him. "Have you tied the bell back?" "It's tied a long time ago," Naruto said, and turned around to check it again, and said to him, "Hey, look." After shaking both sides, the yellow-haired man clasped his hands together devoutly and closed his eyes to worship. Swish, swish. Tomorrow's team quickly shuttled through the forest. After passing through this forest, we will reach Adofu Street in about 5 kilometers. Guji jumped in front of the team and led everyone. There are still 5 kilometers left. Takuno took out a small biscuit from his arms and ate it. Well, after we reach Adofu Street, we will take a short break and continue on our way. Yishan thought for a while and explained to everyone. Okay. Whoosh, whoosh. Sasuke chased all the way, jumping and moving on the treetops. Tokiri Temple is more than 50 kilometers away from the village, and the direction is not right. After the temple, it is basically a wasteland. Naruto and the others will not go there. He calmly analyzed and judged their route while walking, thinking, among the remaining roads, only the direction of Adofu Street is densely populated and well connected. After secretly making up his mind and finally finding the direction, he immediately quickened his pace and rushed towards the route of Adofu Street. In a deep corridor under Konoha. Swish. A sturdy ninja wearing a mask knelt on one knee and solemnly reported to the black-haired middle-aged man walking in front of him. "Danzo-sama. What's the matter?" He turned his back and asked the visitor. "Tsuchigumo Hotaru left Konoha yesterday evening with the servants of our clan." He reported the situation respectfully. "Oh, she left." Hearing this, Danzo turned around. "What happened?" "The reason is unknown. As soon as Kimimaro's funeral was over yesterday, she told her servants to pack up and left Konoha in a carriage in the evening." The subordinate described the process truthfully, and Ito just stood at the main gate to see her off, then returned to the village alone, without chasing after her to keep her. "Are there any other people who left with her?" "No. HMM. Danzo pondered for a while, then suddenly gave an order. "Pass on my order. Secretly send 2 teams of elite troops and make sure to capture Tsuchigumo Hotaru halfway and bring him back to the route." "Yes, but what about her servants?" "Don't do it in front of Tsuchigumo Hotaru. Just find a secret place and kill him." The single eye watched indifferently. "After you're done, remember to deal with it cleanly." After giving this trivial instruction to his subordinates, Danzo turned around and continued to walk slowly. 3:46 p.m. Fang Street. "I always feel that this is a very suspicious place." The yellow-haired man followed Jiraiya forward, looking around and talking to himself. "Sexy immortal, why does the plaque on the entrance say Fang Street instead of Adofu? This place was just renovated some time ago, and the signpost we passed by when we left the village has not been replaced with a new one yet." Jiraiya looked around the street and explained to Naruto. At the same time, outside a busy place on Fang Street, a girl who was dressed fashionably and very bold was passing by this place for something, and suddenly, a small stone that came out of nowhere gently hit her toes. Looking up in front of her, she noticed that no one was throwing small stones, but just as she was about to continue walking forward, another small stone suddenly popped out and gently hit her toes again. The girl looked to her side this time and found that there were 2 mysterious men wearing windbreakers with black backgrounds and red cloud patterns, waving at her to come over. Seeing this, the girl hesitated and wondered why they were looking for her, but she still walked towards their location. "Is it her?" "Yes, that's right." On the street, outside the door of an inconspicuous small hotel, the yellow-haired man was concentrating on the lantern hanging at the door that was spinning in the wind. "Naruto." He looked away. "We'll stay here tonight." Jiraiya filled in the accommodation registration and said to him. Naruto walked into the hotel. "I can still continue on my way." Disciples must obey the arrangements of the teacher. Jiraiya was now putting on airs to fool the yellow-haired man. I just want you to teach me ninjutsu. The yellow-haired man stubbornly refuted him. Isn't this the disciple? Jiraiya was speechless just when he was about to argue with the yellow-haired man. Click, click, A. The two heard the sound, and their eyes wandered. They saw someone passing by the door of the hotel. Jiraiya and Naruto looked closely and noticed that it was a girl with long hair who was dressed fashionably and boldly. Wow. These two big brothers suddenly became uncalm. Oh. After seeing the girl, he glanced at them and flicked her hair. He became excited without any grace, yelling and screaming, and his appearance was very ugly. Naruto. Yes. Snap, clack. You take it. Jiraiya also handed a bunch of things to the yellow-haired man with a kind face. This is the key to the room. He smiled and told him, go to the room first, concentrate chakra to practice, and when you feel that you have practiced enough, you can stop work and rest early. Do you understand? Hey. The yellow-haired man was immediately very angry when he heard his arrangement. You mean, you are going to leave me behind and enter the adult world by yourself? Is this setting going to happen? He was like a madman, jumping up and down and yelling, to cunning, you lecherous immortal. After continuing to protest for a long time, he had no choice but to be driven into the room by Jiraiya to practice. Damn it, I always feel that every time I'm with the lecherous immortal, it will end up like this. He complained unwillingly, sat down on the bed with a bloated face, and began to make hand seals to gather chakra. At 4:07 PM, next to the juggling stall on Fang Fang Street, Mingshan's group also arrived here. He and Yishan were about to find a tea shop to rest for a while before continuing their journey. Hey, it's still the same here, so lively. Takuno said to everyone while watching the acrobatic performances around with great interest. Chapter 179. Look at your character. It's okay. Mingshan didn't have too many deep feelings. Although it was his first time to Fang Fang Street, he had seen many more prosperous and lively places in his previous life. Therefore, he didn't feel as curious as Takuno. Old man Guji was very tactful. He smiled and agreed with Takuno, talking to him, and then mentioned one thing, but now this place has changed its name. Adofu has become Fang Fang. Yes, here. Just when Takuno was about to start gossiping with Guji. Ahem. Yishan was behind them, deliberately reminding seriously, don't look at it. We will continue to set out and leave here after a rest. Try to travel more than 50 kilometers before dark. Understood. Everyone responded in unison. Swish, swish. In the gaps between the forests where light and shadow intertwined, Sasuke kept jumping and jumping very quickly. If it is that place, at the speed I'm keeping now, I can get there soon. Although he said so, in order to be eager to see the man, he once again accelerated his speed. This store's special light-flavored cocktails are really good. A wretched middle-aged man with white hair, very sanctimoniously, stood at the door of a wine shop with his arm around his shoulder, and accompanied by a beautiful young girl, explaining enthusiastically, really, big brother. The girl smiled at him gently and obediently, then let's go into the store and have a drink to see if it's really as good as you said. Okay. Just as the two of them walked into the wine shop like a couple in love, a young man who was also not a good guy accidentally caught a glimpse of this scene. Fuck, it can't be. Swish, swish. At 4:19 PM, on a flyover somewhere on Fang Fang Street. TSK, this is it. Sasuke looked at the street with a big breath, and looked up at the street name above. Why did it change its name to Fang Fang? Forget it. Regardless of that, finding someone is important. Whoosh, whoosh. Sasuke crushed down the overpass without stopping. Looking around, can I only look for it one by one? He stared at the hotels that were frequented by passers-by, gritted his teeth and thought for a while, then ran over and asked in detail. Cheers. In the bar, the white-haired wretched man was toasting with the girl attentively, his eyes full of affection, which made someone who was peeping behind them twitch his mouth a few times. Excuse me, is there a blonde boy about my age and a white-haired uncle living here? Sorry, this is a hotel that specializes in receiving women. Sasuke, who kept searching on the street, was asking the front desk clerk and the owner of the hotel door by door. Bang, bang, bang. Naruto, who was bored in the room, suddenly had an idea and created a few clones for himself. They meditated together to gather chakra and kept muttering, "Do you really want to teach me how to practice?" At the other end of the street. "Hey, look at that. Do you like it?" "Yeah, I like it very much." After leaving the bar, the white-haired man accompanied the girl to stand in front of a stall, pointing at one of the small things, and gently said to her, "Hey, look carefully." "Okay." The girl obediently watched him throw the steel ring. With a thump. As expected, the man caught the small thing she liked. "Wow, you are so good, big brother," the girl said to him very happily, with undisguised admiration in her eyes. "Wow, haha." The white-haired man was so ugly when he heard the words and hugged the girl more closely. Just when he was about to brag about his ring-catching skills. Swish. The girl was suddenly snatched away from the white-haired wretched man. Ah. The girl just screamed in surprise and was knocked unconscious by the man with a knife in his hand. "Hey." The wretched man grabbed the air twice as if by reflex. Just as he was furious, he said, "Who is so brave that dares?" He just turned his eyes and looked up at the man. The next second, his words were stuck in his throat and he didn't fart for a long time. "Why is it you again?" He pointed at the other person with a trembling body and he was shaking with anger. "Why do I always run into you every time I encounter something good?" TSK. The man carried the girl on his shoulders indifferently, walked straight to a corner, put her down, and shook his head at the wretched man, saying speechlessly, "Look at your character. I'm looking for someone. Is there a blonde boy about my age and a white-haired uncle living here?" "Sorry, all the people staying in our store today are middle-aged and elderly people." Sasuke ran out again in disappointment and anxiety, looking around. The yellow-haired man was meditating in the room, and more clones appeared. After a long while, he finally couldn't help but open his eyes, and then he found that all the clones had already fallen asleep on the ground due to exhaustion. "Hey, why are they all asleep?" he muttered to himself. "Excuse me, is there a blonde boy of my age who looks stupid and another gray-haired uncle living here? White hair?" Finally, when he asked about a certain hotel, a salesperson asked in surprise, "Are there these two people in your hotel?" Sasuke asked him. "Well, I think I saw them when I was changing shifts just now. Let me think about it." The salesperson frowned and closed his eyes to recall. After waiting for a long time, Sasuke was almost out of patience. "Oh." The salesperson finally opened his eyes and remembered the blonde boy and the gray-haired uncle. "Is there?" Sasuke asked anxiously, "Which room are they staying in here?" "Well, wait a moment." The salesperson slowly flipped through the registration book to find in room number 1 at the end of the corridor on the second floor. Ding, ding. Sasuke immediately left the front desk and rushed straight to the stairs. After turning the corner, he quickly ran to the door of room 1 at the end of the corridor on the second floor. Dang, dang. Hearing the knock on the door, Huang Meo woke up from his meditation. Bang, bang. He removed his transformations one by one, got out of bed, and prepared to open the door. Sasuke continued to knock on the door rhythmically, while secretly raising his vigilance. "Here he comes." Naruto muttered secretly as he walked. "Did that guy get dumped so quickly?" Dang, dang, dang. The door was still being knocked. "I heard it." Huang Meo shouted, and walked over. "I'll open the door now." Click. After hearing the sound of the security lock being released inside, Sasuke poked his head in a little bit without waiting for the door to be completely opened, and shouted, "Naruto." "But, Question mark? Sasuke was shocked to find that the person who opened the door for him was not Naruto, but just a stranger whose voice was somewhat similar to Huang Meo's. Chapter 180 Birds of a Feather. It's not him. Looking at the old man and the young man in the room, one of them is indeed a surprised and confused blonde boy, and the other is a middle-aged man with white hair. TSK. Sasuke was helpless because it was not the person he was looking for. He could only quickly leave the place and continue to look for Naruto and the others on the street. Naruto opened the door and looked up at the person who came. He was shocked by the pair of blood red 3 Magatama pupils that were almost exactly the same as Sasuke's. In a trance, he couldn't move his eyes away. "Damn it, why are you here?" the white-haired wretched man on the street asked the boy who ruined his good deeds without any image and grace. "TSK, I was just passing by this Fang street with my teammates. I was planning to buy some daily necessities from the store and then go back to meet up with the others, but I didn't expect," he explained while not hiding the deep contempt on his face. "You toad, wherever you go, you want to create a shocking Twilight romance farce, right? What Twilight romance?" the wretched man angrily retorted to him. "Don't talk nonsense, Mingshan. Come on, Jiraiya, it's not the first day I've known you," Mingshan said with disdain on his face. "Look at your character. Hey, you said this before." Jiraiya wanted to tear him to pieces alive and was about to pounce on him to deal with him. TSK, this girl has been cast under an illusion. Did you really not notice?" Mingshan suddenly stared at him with the sidelong eyes, and the meaning of that expression could not be clearer. He exposed him in a very obscene way, taking advantage of her in her confused state. "You try to take advantage of her as much as possible, right? Cough. I'm not that dirty." Jiraiya, who had been aggressive at first, suddenly jumped up, as if someone had stepped on his tail, and retorted angrily and guilty, "One less person to talk to you." He also exposed the other party without any hesitation. "You are not a good guy either. Do you really think I didn't notice it? It was like a dog bite dog fight. You followed me and the girl all the way for such a long time, and just at this critical moment, you came out to disgust and ruin other people's good things." "I'm not following you," Mingshan said to this guy righteously and seriously. "You were flirting with the girl openly, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to secretly take a few photos while you were chatting. Oh, it turns out that you are all the same kind of people. Hey, we are all just like that. Why bother pretending? Hey, that's not right." Just when Mingshan was about to agree with others reflexively, he suddenly found something wrong and turned around to look around. Fuck. He didn't know when many passers-by suddenly gathered around him and Jiraiya, all of whom were watching the two of them and the unconscious girl with great interest. They also gave thumbs up and praised Mingshan and Jiraiya. "You are so shameless, good job." Jiraiya, fuck. Mingshan, fuck. The two of them carried the girl and ran away from this embarrassing scene. After running a long way, they made sure that no one was paying attention to them, and then they hid in a remote alley, paused, and gasped. "It's all because of your dirty mouth." As soon as they avoided the crowd, the two began to quarrel with each other and blame each other. "Come on." Jiraiya pulled his hand back and said in a very generous manner, "I won't continue to talk nonsense with you. Tell me, who did you come with this time?" "Bayan Yesan." As he spoke, Mingshan took out a scroll from his waist bag and unfolded it. "Our mission this time is to patrol the northern border." He conjured a bamboo tube filled with water from it and unscrewed the bamboo lid. "Is that so? Then, hey, why did you take out the water?" Just as Jiraiya suddenly realized and was about to say something, he saw that the seaweed head actually took out a bamboo tube. His heart skipped a beat and he had a bad premonition. As soon as he finished speaking, wow, hiss, the seaweed head actually splashed water on the girl's face, waking her up. The girl was originally in a deep sleep, and when he poured water on her, she immediately reacted and frowned. "Hey, can't you be a gentleman?" Jiraiya said with pity for the girl. "Hey, wake up." Mingshan ignored his words and let them go in one ear and out the other. Seeing that the girl still didn't wake up, he tried to push her a few times and then shook her hard. "Hey, I say, you should be gentler. Hey, she's not your wife. Why are you so worried?" Well, after a while, she finally woke up. She raised her delicate white hand to support her forehead, slightly opened her eyes, and murmured softly, "What's wrong with me? Hey, look over here." Mingshan saw that she was awake and took the initiative to stretch out his hand and waved it in front of her. After seeing the hand, the girl first uttered a sigh, and then as if she had thought of something, she immediately lowered her head to check her whole body, and then she shouted in fear, "Hey, help me. Hey." Jiraiya and Mingshan were dumbfounded. What's going on? It's indecent assault. The girl ignored the two and continued to shout helplessly in the alley. "Someone come quickly. Hey, Who molested you? Jiraiya was so embarrassed when he heard it, and just when he was about to explain it to the girl. Someone come quickly, help. Bang. Mingshin made a knife with a very tricky angle and chopped the girl hard and fast, knocking her unconscious again. He breathed a sigh of relief and muttered, "Now, my ears can finally be quiet for a while. It's so noisy. TSK, you don't know how to be gentle with women." Jiraiya saw it, shook his head and sighed, and said that his cruel behavior was absolutely unacceptable. "TSK, why don't you give me a hand and come over to help me?" Mingshin half knelt down and put the girl on his shoulders again. "Huh, you're right. Hey, what are you doing?" Before Jiraiya finished his sentence, he saw him throwing the girl over. He quickly stretched out his hand and caught her in time, asking, "What do you mean by this, kid? I have to go back to the army to gather. I'm in a hurry. I'll leave her to you first," he said to Jiraiya while running without looking back. "What?" Jiraiya immediately got angry. "You kid knocked her out." He was furious, and then, "Just throw her to me, and that's it? Why are you talking so much nonsense? Just do what I tell you to do, and send her back." Swish. When Mingshin finished his words, he disappeared, leaving Jiraiya alone in the wind. Chapter 181. Ucha has passed. How hateful, this guy. Jiraiya gritted his teeth and said secretly, "It's okay to ruin the good thing between me and my sister. I can tolerate it." He clenched his fists. How dare he order me around so much? Although he gritted his teeth and muttered these bits and pieces, after a long time, he glanced at the girl. Alas, although this kid is too unkind, I can't really ignore her. After a long silence, Jiraiya finally decided helplessly to carry the person up and properly place him before returning to the hotel. Sasuke. Naruto's forehead was dripping with cold sweat at this moment, thinking, "No, who is he?" Looking at the other party, how can he have the same Sharingan as Sasuke? I didn't expect that this kid would have the 9 tails sealed in his body. A sudden voice sounded from behind the man, approached his companion, and said to him curiously, "HMM." Naruto was shocked when he heard this. Why do these guys know about the 9 tails? "Naruto." Itachi broke the silence and said slowly, "Please come with us." Swish, swish. That guy is nearby. Sasuke, who was searching along the road, unconsciously reappeared, his face in his mind. Sasuke knew very well that the man must be nearby, and it was even possible that he had found Naruto. That guy. As he searched for traces along the road, those long forgotten past events, one after another, like a passing scene, made him involuntarily go back to the past and be forced to remember. In the Uchiha clan's land, in a mansion, at the entrance of the house, there was a 7-year-old boy who kept pestering his brother, who was putting on shoes and going on a long journey, and shouted childishly behind him, "Brother." Huh. The brother turned around and looked at him. "After school today, accompany me to practice shuriken. I'm very busy recently. You can go to my father to help you practice." But the little boy didn't want to give up and continued to try to say to his brother, "When it comes to shuriken skills, my brother is still better. Even I can see it." Although he heard him say this, the brother did not respond to the little boy. "My brother always treats me as a troublesome person," the little boy said angrily when he saw him like this. After hearing his complaint, the brother waved to him directly. Seeing this, the little boy thought that his brother had changed his mind, and he ran to him in anticipation. Dang, dang. Just as he ran in front of him, he was unexpectedly flicked on the forehead by his brother with 2 fingers. "It hurts." The little boy closed his eyes and muttered, "Forgive me, Sasuke. I will teach you next time." The brother smiled at him, but stopped talking, silent, and looked like he was worried. "I really don't have time to practice with you today." The brother stood up and turned his back to him. "Every time you say forgive me, Sasuke, and then you poke my forehead and leave." Sasuke rubbed his painful forehead, still muttering about what his brother said. "And you always say today, you are not willing to take time to practice with me." His brother did not answer him, but opened the door of his house and walked away. Sasuke was not angry, just watched his brother leave the house silently. "Dad?" Huh. Back in the living room, young Sasuke asked his father naively, "Why does my brother always not want to pay attention to me? He has been a little weird lately." His father frowned and thought, he suddenly doesn't like to get close to others. Why? I don't know. His father looked straight ahead and sighed. He has become so different that even I, as a father, can't see through him. After saying that, his eyes were deep and complicated. Here, Sasuke, take your lunch. His mother's voice sounded at the right time, and she smiled at him. After school, if you want to practice shuriken, mom will train with you. Sasuke nodded, stretched out his hand to take the lunch, and did not forget to correct his mother's words. It's not practice, it's training. After that, he took his school bag, ran to the entrance, to put on his shoes, and before leaving, he did not forget to shout to the living room, I'm leaving. Well, be careful on the road. Walking out of the house, Sasuke walked on the way to school, and from time to time, neighbors and tribesmen greeted him. Sasuke, are you going to school now? An aunt who was cleaning her door on the side of the road asked him kindly. Yeah. I just saw your brother. She smiled with deep emotion. Itachi has become very remarkable now, and is an outstanding ninja who can stand on his own in our clan. As she spoke, she often praised her brother's past experiences, as if she knew them all. He graduated from the ninja school with the first place at the age of 7, and was promoted to Chunin at the age of 10. Also, your brother was able to use the Sharingan when he was 8 years old. Little Sasuke added to remind his aunt. Oh, yes. Aunt happily reached out and stroked little Sasuke's head. He is the pride of our Uchiha clan. By the way. Suddenly, as if she remembered something, she asked him curiously, how old is Sasuke this year? Sasuke was startled when he heard this, and suddenly his mood became a little depressed. Although I'm the same age as my brother when he graduated, but completely. What's wrong, Sasuke? Seeing Sasuke frowning, as if he was troubled by something, Aunt asked him with concern. Hey, don't talk about these boring topics to little Sasuke. Hey, husband. Sasuke, you and Itachi are the pride of our Uchiha clan. Aunt's husband slowly approached the two of them from behind her. He looked at Sasuke and encouraged him loudly. You must be confident and work hard. One day, you will become a powerful ninja like Itachi. Yeah. Little Sasuke nodded happily after listening to the adult's words. I'm leaving. Come on. Study hard. After Sasuke arrived at school, he devoted himself to studying. He silently said to himself in his heart, uncle and aunt are right. I'm also a member of the Uchiha clan like my brother. He vowed secretly, I won't lose to my brother. A day in the ninja school passed quickly. Sasuke used the free time after school to practice alone, and it was dark in a blink of an eye. He ran on the way home, secretly sticking out his tongue to himself. I accidentally practiced too much at school. It's so late now. I wonder if mom and dad. Just as Sasuke was running all the way and daydreaming, suddenly, Sasuke felt as if he was being spied on by something scary, and he felt very uncomfortable, and gradually slowed down his pace. He raised his head slightly, looking at an electric pole, until he reached the top, and found that there was nothing, except the bright moon in the sky. But despite this, what's going on? Sasuke was uneasy. Why do I always feel like someone was standing there looking at me just now? Suddenly, he found that something was wrong with the tribe. Chapter 182 Tragic Night. He was in a hurry to get home, and didn't pay close attention. After he paused, he found that the surroundings were strangely very quiet, so quiet that it was a little creepy. Why are the street lights on both sides of the clan not on to illuminate the road? Sasuke glanced around the street anxiously. It's not time to go to bed yet. Where is everyone? He quickened his pace to go home with doubts and uneasiness. Click, click. When he turned and passed an alley, he suddenly felt a shock all over his body. This is. The young Sasuke looked around him in a daze. Everything he saw was a mess. The Uchiha clan members were slaughtered without distinction of age, and all of them were lying in a pool of blood. This. Although Sasuke was extremely scared, he still mustered up his courage and bravely crossed the alley. He kept wondering what was going on. What on earth is going on? When Sasuke ran past a corner, he caught a glimpse of two familiar corpses. He walked closer and looked down, and was instantly horrified. How could this happen? The two corpses that fell to the ground were the uncle and aunt he had just chatted with in the morning. Dad, Mom. He raised his head and looked in the direction of his home with great worry. He suppressed the panic in his heart and quickly quickened his pace and ran back. After a while, he finally got home. Sasuke opened the door and found that the house was the same as outside. It was pitch black inside, and he couldn't see his hand in front of his face. Dad, Mom, Brother. Sasuke tried to shout loudly, but no one responded to him. Are you all not home? Sasuke took off his shoes and put them neatly, as usual, and then put his school bag on the ground and went into the house. Living room, kitchen, bedroom. Sasuke searched everywhere he could, but still couldn't find his family. He was getting anxious. Boom, boom. A dull sound of heavy objects falling to the ground reached his ears. That's over there. Sasuke was startled and hurried to chase the source. He stopped in front of a training ground at home, took a breath nervously, and was about to reach out to open the door, but suddenly hesitated and shrank back. Someone is inside. Realizing that there were still people walking inside, his legs became weak in fear. Move, move. Sasuke closed his eyes and forced himself to lift his feet and move his hands. Move. He was angry in his heart, shouted to himself, and put both hands on the door handle to exert force. Squeak. Ah. The door of the training ground was pushed open by Sasuke. Dad, Mom. As soon as he came in shouting, he saw two bodies lying on the ground. With the moonlight shining in the room, Sasuke saw a person walking out of the darkness slowly. Just as he was so scared that he kept retreating and was about to get close to the wall, he suddenly saw who the person was. Under the light, the person gradually moved his gaze to Sasuke. The blood-red 3 Magatama Sharingan looked even more ghostly and strange in the dark night. Brother. Sasuke finally had a backbone to rely on and said to his brother very aggrievedly, Brother, Dad and Mom. He closed his eyes and shook his head. Why did we Uchiha become like this? He asked again and again. Who did this? Swish. Boom. As soon as Sasuke finished speaking, a shuriken brushed past him. Swish. After he was stunned for a moment, a wound was cut open on his left shoulder. It hurts. Sasuke felt the pain, covered the wound with his hand, and looked at his brother in disbelief. Brother, what are you doing? His brother did not answer, but just stared at him with his eyes. Seeing him like this, young Sasuke had already guessed the answer and knew who killed everyone. His brother took a few steps forward. What are you going to do, brother? Although he had guessed the result, he still didn't want to believe this fact. My stupid brother. His brother spoke at this moment, but he was not interested in answering his question. Instead, he closed his eyes and recited silently, Mangekyo Sharingan. When he opened his eyes again, the 3 Magatama in his pupils had undergone amazing changes, and Sasuke was completely shocked for a moment. The scenery in his side suddenly twisted and deformed. The streets that were originally illuminated by the bright moon and silent were now surprisingly transformed into red and black. Time went back, and Sasuke saw all the things that happened before. Hey. One by one, the black and white tribesmen fell down in front of him. My feet. Sasuke was so scared that he wanted to lift his feet and turn around to run away, but he found that he could no longer move. Dang, dang, dang. The dull sound of falling to the ground continued one after another, and a sound of shuriken flashing past came from the distance. Ta. More tribesmen were being mercilessly shot. Ah. Sasuke finally couldn't stand it anymore, holding his head and shouting, Stop it, brother. He shook his head vigorously, trying to wake himself up. Don't let me see this kind of thing again. Boom, boom, boom. After all the remaining tribesmen at the scene fell, Itachi stood in front of Sasuke indifferently. Why did my brother do this? Sasuke looked at everything around him in great pain, and found that more people gathered around his brother, all holding kunai in their hands, obviously wanting to attack and kill him. No, I don't want to watch. But they were all defeated and killed by his brother as soon as they met. Sasuke turned his head and glanced at the two people standing beside him. Uncle, aunt. He just shouted this sentence, and the two of them were mercilessly shot by the shuriken that attacked, and their deaths were just like what he saw at the beginning. Ah. Little Sasuke wailed in pain. The camera turned, and he suddenly saw that he was in his own training ground again. Dad, Mom. He saw his brother standing behind the adults with a butcher knife in his hand. Stop it, brother. Sasuke begged and questioned him. Why did you kill Mom and Dad? Itachi ignored his brother's questioning and swung his knife. Blood splattered 5 steps away. Ah. Little Sasuke woke up from the illusion at this time. He knelt on the ground with his hands on his head, and his whole body was gradually collapsing. Boom. In the end, he couldn't support himself, and fell to the ground, drooling from his mouth. Sasuke lay on the ground with his eyes blank, looking at his parents' bodies. Why, brother? To test my capacity. Itachi spoke to break the claustrophobic and dull atmosphere and answered him. Test capacity? Sasuke muttered in his mouth. Just for this purpose? Itachi looked at him. Just for this, you want to kill everyone? Sasuke continued to question him in a trembling voice. Because it is very important. His beloved brother closed his eyes and said cruelly, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Survival. What's that? Sasuke got up, roared and ran towards Itachi, roaring, what a joke. Boom. Itachi punched Sasuke in the stomach without caring. Ah. After being hit hard by his brother, he raised his head with difficulty, and tears of unwillingness overflowed from his eyes. Click. Itachi raised his foot, and walked in front of Sasuke. He stared at the foot in front of him, feeling terrified, so scary. He couldn't help but get up in a panic and ran back. So scary. Ah. He fled this family under Itachi's cold gaze. Don't kill me. Sasuke ran aimlessly in the streets of the clan, shouting wildly. Click. He was forced to stop after running for a while because Itachi suddenly blocked Sasuke's escape, as if in a dream. Brother. He retreated cowardly again and again. The 7-year-old child really didn't understand why his family had become like this in just one day. This is not true. Sasuke questioned helplessly. My brother won't be like this at all, because... But before he could finish his words, the reason why I have been playing the role of the brother you expect, Itachi told him the truth very straightforwardly, is to confirm your own ability. You will be my opponent, to test my own ability in the future. He looked at Sasuke without blinking, because you have this possibility. That's why I let you live, it's for my own good. There was no trace of pity. You and I are both people who have the possibility of opening the Mangeki Sharingan, but before that, a prerequisite must be met. Mangekyo, Sharingan, condition? Sasuke muttered to himself when he heard this. He didn't understand what the Mangeki his brother was talking about now, and just looked at Itachi with fear. That means killing your best friend. Itachi ignored his confusion, and said to himself, just like me. How could it be? Sasuke felt incredible and thought of what he saw at his doorstep yesterday. About Uchiha Shizu who committed suicide by jumping into the Minamiga River last night. 3 Uchiha clan members interrogated their brother who was standing at the doorstep. Another person who didn't come to the gathering was Shizu. Another one of them questioned Itachi. I remember that you seemed to treat Shizu as your own brother. Did brother do what happened yesterday? Sasuke asked Itachi in an uncertain tone, as if he had never known him. Could it be that brother did Shizu? Yes. Itachi admitted frankly. Thanks to him, I can get this pair of eyes. The main hall of Nanga Shrine. Enter from under the 7th tatami from the right at the back, is the gathering place of our clan. Itachi mentioned some secrets of the clan to him. In that place, there are records of our Uchiha clan's eye technique, and why it originally existed, which is the real secret of the Sharingan. The real secret. Of course, all these have to wait until you can open the Sharingan. Itachi raised the corner of his mouth and said to Sasuke meaningfully, if you can open your eyes successfully, then including me, there will be 3 people who can use the Mangeki Sharingan. He did not hide his expectations. HMPH. In that case, if I'll let you go, it means that my existence still has some value. Value. Itachi just moved away, and Sasuke shrank back in fear like a frightened bird, looking at him, thinking that he regretted it, and wanted to kill him. Don't worry, you are not worth killing now. My stupid brother, if you want to kill me, then hate me, detest me, and then live ugly. Itachi closed his eyes. Escape, escape, and escape again. Do everything you can to survive, and wait until one day, when you also have these eyes, come to me again. After that, he suddenly opened his Sharingan, and looked at his brother. After Sasuke cut off this memory, his eyes had unconsciously turned into a blood-red double Magatama state. Swish, swish. As he quickened his pace to the last few hotels, Mingshan just came out of the alley carrying something, and bumped into this bag. Hey, that seems to be Sam. Can you come outside? Outside the room, the person who came in calmly said to Naruto. They seem to be the two guys who walked with Mingshan in the morning. Naruto walked out of the door in doubt. Well, Itachi. Kisame started to discuss with Itachi. It will be troublesome if we let him run around now. He suggested to him, why don't we cut off one of his legs first? What is he talking about? Naruto looked at him in disbelief. Silent, Itachi did not speak out to object to Kisame's doing this. Then, just as he was about to get closer to the yellow-haired man, Naruto stared at Kisame in front of him nervously, watching him reach behind his back to draw out his sword. Long time no see. Itachi suddenly said something without a beginning or an end. Sasuke. That's. Naruto and Kisame were both stunned. They shifted their gazes and looked behind Itachi, each thinking in their hearts. Sasuke. Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha. Itachi. Naruto was shocked. He and Sasuke have the same surname, Uchiha. Oh, he is the Sasuke that seaweed head mentioned that time. Seeing this interesting scene, Kisame couldn't help but put down his hand holding the knife and grinned. Oh, he has also opened the Sharingan, and he looks a lot like you. After all, he is my brother. Itachi turned around, and with his blood-red eyes, he secretly looked at Sasuke without the two people beside him knowing, and thought to himself, has the Sharingan been opened? Well done. What? Naruto heard him say it so lightly, but his heart was filled with shock. Thinking of the previous few times, Sasuke, I have a man I must kill. That man, before killing my brother. How can I die so easily? This guy is the one, Sasuke said, the man he swore to get rid of personally. Naruto said anxiously in his heart. Heh, the last survivor of the Uchiha clan. Kisame said, looking meaningfully at Itachi. Uchiha Itachi, I'm going to kill you. Sasuke opened his Sharingan wide and said to the man fiercely, just as you said, I hate you, I despise you, and just to kill you, let me see how strong you've become. Lightning flashed and surged above Sasuke, like countless birds chirping, that's why I'm still alive. Pulling his collar, he roared angrily. Sasuke! Naruto shouted at him. Chapter 184 Chidori. Chidori? Itachi watched Sasuke perform this jutsu and immediately guessed that it was from Professor Kakashi. I'm going to kill you. Bang. Sasuke cast Chidori and pressed his hand against the wall. Hey. He roared and rushed over. Go to hell. He attacked Itachi head on. Swish, swish. At this moment, Itachi, Kisame, and Naruto suddenly saw a very fast after image flashing past Sasuke's back, and at the same time, responded in their hearts. That's it. Boom. Crack. Just one step away from Itachi, the wall was bombed into a big hole by Sasuke's Chidori. Who is it? Sasuke roared unwillingly, and the Chidori was kicked off the attack direction and hit the wall on the side. Oh, this is it. It's over. It pierced the wall of the hotel and made such a big hole. A lazy voice with no enthusiasm came from the dust. Oh, ha. Kisame was inexplicably happy to hear that. You kid would still worry about this. I really can't tell. Tomorrow? Sasuke raised his head in doubt, looking at the back of the figure walking out of the billowing smoke. He appeared with his iconic seaweed hair, raised his hand to flick off the dust on his body, tied the forehead protector again, put one hand on the Kusanagi sword on his waist, and confronted Itachi and Kisame. Hey, tomorrow, why are you here? Naruto was very surprised to see him. He explained to Naruto behind Itachi, I and others are going to the north to carry out a mission. I happened to pass by Fang Fang and ran into Sasuke on the street. I followed him all the way. Come. Get out of the way. Tomorrow. He was interrupted by the angry Sasuke behind him before he finished his sentence. Mingshan heard this, turned his head, looked at Sasuke, and asked him without any expression, what are you going to do? Humph, it has nothing to do with you. Sasuke took a step back and answered him gloomily. Lightning began to gather in his hands again, and the sound of birds chirped again. Do you need to rush to die so quickly? Mingshan grinned and asked him with a curious smile on his face. What did you say? Sasuke heard this and became even more emotional. Mingshan, what are you doing? Naruto looked at him in confusion and was very angry. I'm kindly reminding him not to embarrass himself in front of brother Itachi. Mingshan frowned and snorted coldly. With your current strength, you still want to kill him? His expression was full of sarcasm and disdain. Arsehole. Sasuke gritted his teeth and glared at Mingshan. Get out of my way. What if I refuse? Mingshan said the same thing, his face still calm. Swish. He didn't say any more nonsense and raised his hand to prepare, aiming the Chidori at Mingshan, but unexpectedly. Several arm-thick vines suddenly appeared from under the floor. Sasuke was caught off guard and was tied up by them before he could jump away in time. Damn it. Mingshan, you. Naruto looked at him incomprehensibly and couldn't help but scold him. Why are you tying up Sasuke? He's in the way. Mingshan told the yellow-haired man the truth and turned around to ask the other side. What do you think? Itachi didn't say anything but frowned deeply and his eyes changed subtly. On the contrary, Kisame laughed and said, I didn't expect you to be so cruel to your own people. I'm doing this for his own good. Mingshan looked at Itachi and said something that only the two of them could understand. Sasuke is too weak to kill you. Such a crazy attack will only make his voice hoarse and kill him in vain. Let me go. Sasuke yelled. He watched Itachi standing in front of him, but was held tightly by Mingshan with wood release, unable to move. He was filled with hatred. Mingshan ignored his roar, frowned and muttered, it's so noisy. With a choke, he drew out the Kusanagi sword and prepared to attack. Is the purpose of your coming to Konoha this time for Naruto? Mingshan said to him seriously. Brother Itachi, shark head. That's right. Itachi nodded. At this point, there was no point in denying it. Boy, do I really want to continue fighting with you? When Kisame said this, his face was full of excitement and anticipation. He took the initiative to remove all the bandages around the broadsword. It just so happens that we haven't decided the winner of that battle yet. That battle? Naruto didn't understand the conversation between them. Mingshan, you. Yellow-haired. No, Naruto. Mingshan was fluent in what he said and quickly changed the name in his mouth and ordered him. You will help me later. Whoosh, whoosh. An attack came quickly with a sharp and heavy sound of breaking wind, cutting him from Mingshan's side unexpectedly, forcing him to move quickly to avoid it. Ding. After holding the Kusanagi sword tightly with both hands and blocking the broadsword, Mingshan cursed. You are really insidious, sharkhead. Oh, there is no point in talking more. Kisame let go of one side and held the handle of the sword with one hand. Just as he was about to exert force. Ding, ding. Mingshan let out a low roar, forced the blade away, dodged to the side, and fought him in close combat. The two slashed at each other, and it was very lively. The last time I cast an illusion on him, it didn't work. It seems that I have to. Itachi stood far away, thinking about the countermeasures to fight Mingshan. Itachi. La. There were crisp cracking sounds of tree roots, and it was Sasuke who used a kunai to cut the vines violently. After struggling to get rid of the branches that bound his body, he said, ha. He drove Chidori again regardless of everything, and rushed towards Itachi. Sasuke. Seeing him fighting so hard, Naruto hurriedly raised his hand and pretended to make a seal. A stream of red chakra swirled around his body, and he shouted, how much? Too slow. After Kisame forced Mingshan away with a flash attack, he accelerated his feet and came to Naruto in an instant, swung his knife fiercely, and whoosh. The red chakra surrounding him disappeared completely. What? Naruto was stunned and nervously tried several times. Why can't I feel chakra? Damn it. Damn it. Whoosh, whoosh. Before he could accumulate new chakra, the big sword had already swung in front of him. Get out of the way. Mingshan didn't have time to get to him and rushed directly under the blade, holding the Kusanagi sword with both hands, tilted upward, and blocked Kisame's attack. Clang. Boom. He kicked Naruto far away. Whoosh. When Mingshan kicked the yellow-haired man away, Kisame took advantage of this gap, changed his moves, and slashed his right arm with a knife at high speed. Swish. Chis. Although Mingshin's reaction was sharp enough, he was still half a beat slower, and was cut by Kisame's blade, and his sleeve was torn and blood splashed. Cough. Naruto rubbed his stomach, which was hurt by Mingshin's kick. Just as he was about to lose his temper and curse, he saw that Mingshin was injured. Although he was fighting with Kisame with ease, he did not have any advantage. Chapter 185 Battle in the House. On the other side, Sasuke had already cast the Chidori during their fierce battle. When he was about to get close to Itachi, he heard him growl, "Go to hell." Sasuke raised his hand again and launched a fierce attack on his brother. The arc of light on the electric light carried a mighty force and hit Itachi directly, but unexpectedly. Bang, crack. One hand hit the wall again, blasting a big hole in the window. TSK, this idiot, he really won't give up until he reaches the Yellow River. Mingshin blurted out dissatisfiedly. Yellow River? Kisame asked him with interest. Hey, is there such a river in the big river basin in the Land of Fire? Ding. Crack. Humph, there is no point in talking more. Mingshin responded to Kisame with a more fierce attack. After the smoke caused by the Chidori dissipated, Naruto looked at Sasuke and was surprised to find that his hand was easily held by Itachi. How could it be like this? Naruto looked at the two in disbelief, thinking, Sasuke's ninjutsu was so easily broken by Itachi. This Chidori, it's Kakashi. Itachi grabbed Sasuke's hand, and after a moment of hesitation, I see. He suddenly realized and focused all his attention on the battle with Kisame tomorrow. That kid is different from ordinary opponents. What should I do? Because tomorrow is immune to illusions, most of Itachi's ninjutsu related to illusions became useless, so he simply chose to give up and think of another way. Damn it. Sasuke wanted to pull his hand back, but found that he couldn't get out of Itachi's grip. Itachi was rethinking the countermeasures in his mind, and Sasuke's roar and shaking once again disrupted his thinking. He didn't even look at his brother, and secretly exerted his strength to squeeze. Don't get in the way. Sasuke's wrist was broken, and he cried out in pain. Itachi released his hand and let him squat on the ground. Sasuke. Naruto saw that he was in a bad situation, and he was very anxious. Damn it. He quickly bit his thumb and started to make a seal. Ninjutsu, summoning. Swish. Itachi suddenly left a phantom on the spot and approached Naruto in an instant. You should take a break, Naruto. After saying that, Itachi opened his eyes wide and looked down at Naruto, who was looking up at him. Why, Naruto suddenly began to feel very tired. His eyes were so dull that he couldn't lift them up, and he fell asleep on the ground. TSK, did you cast an illusion on Naruto? Mingshin glanced at Naruto hurriedly and was very anxious to run to rescue that guy, but, ding, whoosh, hey, your opponent is me. Kisame grinned and kindly reminded him. TSK. Mingshin dodged to a corner of the wall, and when he saw Itachi was about to carry Naruto on his shoulders and take him away, there's nothing I can do. He gritted his teeth and took out 2 purple pills from his waist bag. Whoosh. Now is not the time for you to be stunned. Kisame smiled and held a knife, approaching Mingshin, and was about to slash and attack. Bang. He threw something on the ground fiercely, and bursts of thick purple smoke gushed out all around. Kisame cautiously blocked in front of him with a horizontal knife. It turned out to be a smoke bomb. Swish, swish. Mingshin took advantage of this gap and ran towards Itachi with 3 shuriken between his right fingers. He threw them out fiercely. Swish, swish. He threw a flash attack directly at his back. Ding, ding. Itachi turned sideways and threw the yellow-haired man on his left shoulder to the ground and casually took out a kunai from his right sleeve, blocking the shuriken rushing in front of him one by one. Aren't you afraid of hurting Naruto? Itachi was curious about why he acted so decisively. It's okay, that guy has thick skin and flesh. It won't shorten his life if he bleeds a little. Mingshin yawned and casually told Itachi something insignificant. Well. Itachi was obviously stunned and was obviously quite speechless by his shocking remarks. Of course, if Uang woke up at this time and heard him say this, he would definitely jump up and roll up his sleeves, put the enemy aside, and settle accounts with Mingshin first. Whoosh, whoosh. Mingshin moved close to Itachi and swung his sword straight down from the front. Swish. Without any intention of dodging, he let Mingshan's attack approach him. The moment his body was touched and cut by the Kusanagi sword, bang, white mist rose up. It's actually a clone. He quickly scanned the surroundings. Where can he be? Just when Mingshan couldn't find Itachi's trace. After Kisame swung his sword wildly to disperse the thick fog, he shouted at Mingshan's back, "You kid." Question mark? Suddenly, he was alerted, as if something was coming at him from his left at high speed, which made his hair stand on end. He turned his waist at high speed and growled, "Hey." Kisame shook his sword and chopped it down diagonally with a very fierce momentum. Clang. Mingshan's hands holding the sword remained unchanged, and he rushed forward, but his head was cut into two parts by Kisame, and his limbs gradually faded into a wooden state. A wooden clone, but, he was about to make a teasing remark, but he was surprised to see that the clone's back was covered with detonating talismans, and someone had activated it at the right time, and it was burning. Oh no. A burst of white light flashed by. Boom. Boom. It set off waves of smoke that were more violent than before. Cough, cough. Sasuke coughed, covered his mouth, and stood up again from the ground, but before he could recover from the thick fog, swish. Itachi had already flashed in front of Sasuke strangely, and kicked him against the wall at the end of the corridor unexpectedly. Cough. Sasuke covered his injured belly in extreme pain, and curled up against the wall helplessly. Sasuke. Mingshan took the time to glance at him, and shook his head helplessly. The difference in strength between them was too great. That won't work. He raised his foot, and was about to run to Sasuke. Swish. Boom. A large sword covered with dark blue barbs, driven by Kisame, swung at him at high speed. Mingshan was caught off guard, and was easily approached by him. In desperation, he had to jump and flip in the air to avoid the attack, but the result was, bang. He was kicked hard in the back, ahem. Blood spurted out of his mouth, hurting his internal organs. Mingshan gritted his teeth, turned around with the sword, swung a few times, forced the man away, and staggered back a few steps against the wall. He panted, raised his head with difficulty, and looked at the ragged and embarrassed Kisame not far away. He even had the heart to grin. TSK, it's really weird. This explosion didn't hurt you. Bang. His other clone holding a knife was disarmed, and Kisame flashed and took the weapon that was about to fall to the ground. Sneer. Don't think you are the only one who can use clones to coordinate attacks. Chapter 186. Forgive my cruelty. In the explosion of the wooden clone just now, Kisame didn't have time to make hand seals and perform defensive spells. Although he barely blocked most of the impact with the broad blade of his sword, many parts of his body were still affected, and his clothes and sleeves were torn to pieces, making him look as funny as a beggar on the street. This seaweed head. Kisame muttered, shaking his arms from time to time, running towards Mingshan without stopping, swinging his sword to attack again. Swish. Seeing him attacking, Mingshan coughed and stood up from the wall to meet the enemy. He casually applied the hemostatic patch in his waist bag to the wound on his arm. He looked at the shark head with a very solemn expression and thought to himself, not good. This shark head is obviously trying to hold me back for brother Itachi. He knew very well that he had no way to deal with Kisame. The difference in strength between the two was huge. Although he and the shark head were evenly matched, in fact, he was not sure that he could beat this guy. Swish. Mingshan swung to shuriken with his left hand, pretending to attack. Ding, ding. Although he was easily blocked and flew away, he also slowed down his steps slightly. Seeing this, Mingshan took the opportunity to walk along the wall. Holding the Kusanagi sword, he approached Kisame with a low roar, and they swung their weapons at the same time. Bang, clang. As soon as they started fighting, the Kusanagi sword in his hand was wildly knocked away by Kisame's broadsword. The power in this guy's hand is much more violent than before. Mingshan thought to himself, calmly responded, took out another kunai from his waist bag, and instantly stuck behind Kisame. Clang. Kisame held the broadsword in his left hand, and also conjured a kunai in his right hand, rubbing and blocking his side attack, and the two fell into a stalemate. Hey, are you going to compete with me in strength? I'll never fight you, watch me. Mingshan's swordsmanship is mature and steady, yet strong and fierce. He strikes without any hesitation, and is very decisive. Itachi approached Sasuke while paying attention to the fight between the two of them. Unfortunately, in terms of overall strength, he is still slightly inferior to Kisame. Although he has learned fine skills, they are not deep enough. Although he made such an assessment in his mind, he was still very optimistic about Mingshin. If he did not consider his own personality problems, the young man's attainments in ninjutsu would be able to grow to the same level as the person Itachi regarded as his brother in the future. Itachi thought of this and temporarily closed his eyes and put away his thoughts, because at this moment, he had already walked to Sasuke. Hearing the footsteps, Sasuke raised his head, and the blood-red double Magatama in his eyes had faded. He stared at Itachi hatefully and roared, "Just right." He stood up and rushed straight towards him. Bang! Itachi's left hand mercilessly punched him in the abdomen. Ahem. Sasuke bent over and coughed, feeling confused. Why? Boom. Just like that time, I didn't close the gap with him at all. Then, Itachi's right hand flashed and hit Sasuke's cervical vertebrae fiercely. Although it was painful, he was roaring in his heart at the far distance between the two of them. Why is this? What have I done so far? Then he was lifted up by Itachi's right leg, and after hitting him with his knee, he punched him hard. You really don't show any mercy to your brother. Kisame glimpsed this scene in the gap between the fight, and muttered to himself, what the hell? Sasuke couldn't bear Itachi's continuous beating this time. His throat felt sweet, and he coughed up blood. Ahem. With a plop, he finally fell to the ground. You don't hate enough. Looking down at his brother, Itachi's eyes had a sadness that others couldn't see, and he had to force himself to continue doing so. Bending down, he grabbed Sasuke's neck with one hand, lifted him up, and pressed him against the wall. You are very weak, he said coldly on the surface. Why are you so weak? Forgive me, Sasuke. In his heart, he kept apologizing to his brother. Forgive me. Itachi closed his eyes and prepared to cast the spell on him again. He showed a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth and looked at Sasuke. It's because your hatred for me is not deep enough. He slowly opened his eyes again, and the three blood-red Magatama inside had changed. It is necessary to let you relive that night again. No, don't. Sasuke looked at the Sharingan in Itachi's eyes and refused in horror. Stop, stop. But it was so useless that he didn't even have the strength to shake his head. Hate me as much as you want. Itachi's heart was bleeding silently, but his eyes were still sharp, and he resolutely launched the illusion. Well, Sasuke's eyes were suddenly shocked, and in an instant, everything around him became a world of black and white. His body slowly fell down, and finally, after an unknown amount of time, he landed on a street. He looked up at the sky, which was still as blood-red as ever. Could this be? Sasuke raised his hands and found that he had turned into his childhood appearance. Yes. Itachi's voice sounded coldly in his ears. This is our Uchiha Street. Uncle, aunt. Little Sasuke turned to look at the clan members who appeared at his side and called them subconsciously, and suddenly, you are very weak. A voice that made Sasuke extremely afraid and hateful came faintly from behind him. 24 hours from now, Itachi's figure appeared behind his uncle and aunt, his hands tightly holding the narrow ninja sword, and raised his hands. Stop. Sasuke shouted tremblingly. You will always linger in the clan that night. While Itachi pronounced a cruel sentence on him without any mercy, he asked another Itachi to take action. Stop. Little Sasuke covered his ears and roared and wailed, but unfortunately, his shouting did not make Itachi pause for a moment. He raised his sword and slashed, and the tribesmen were still killed one by one. Ah. What's going on? Mingshin was shocked when he heard Sasuke's scream. He now had his back to the Itachi brothers and could not see what was happening there. Kisame, who was facing Mingshin and fighting against him, saw it clearly and said in his heart, Itachi actually used Tsukuyomi to deal with his own brother. Really, is it necessary to do it so ruthlessly? Dad, Mom. In the area that Mingshin and Kisame could not see, little Sasuke's vision was forced to change at this moment, and he was taken back to his home training ground, and was once again forced to relive the tragedy of his brother killing his parents. People like you are not worth being killed. Itachi stood behind little Sasuke, holding his head tightly with both hands, forcing him to open his eyes and watch. Ah. My stupid brother, if you want to kill me, then hate me, despise me, and then live your ugly life. The cruel voice echoed in his ears. Escape, escape, and escape again, and do everything you can to survive. Ah. After Sasuke screamed again, he suddenly relaxed and drooped his head. Bang. Boom. After Mengshin forced Kisame to retreat with a fierce attack, he finally turned around and saw Sasuke's miserable appearance being beaten by Itachi. The whole person was tortured by him and was half breathing, obviously not very angry. TSK, forget it, I really owed him in my last life. He clenched his teeth, really couldn't bear to watch it, and casually threw 2 more purple pills from his waist bag and threw them directly to the ground in front of Kisame. Bang, bang, bang. TSK, why are you throwing smoke bombs again? Kisame yelled in dissatisfaction. Is it going to stop? TSK, what do you care about me? Mengshin casually perfunctorily answered him and quickly formed a seal with his hands and shouted, would release, sea of trees birth. Crack, crack. The ground suddenly broke open and layers of emerald green tundra branches and buds were quickly injected with chakra by Mengshin in a flash. After being nourished, the vitality inside grew wildly, and the corridor was lush and green in an instant, and the environment changed drastically. Huh, did this kid activate would release? Kisame had just finished dispelling the spray, and he had to deal with these annoying branches and vines head on. Itachi also looked at the thick green branches and buds gradually approaching around him, and frowned secretly. Whoosh, whoosh. He had to be forced to throw Sasuke, who had been seriously injured by him, so that he could dodge and avoid the cross-shuttle attack of Konoha that followed. Puff, puff. Sasuke was easily caught and wrapped by the newly grown vines on the ground. Huh. Mengshin secretly breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Linmu catch him and hold him up. He did not dare to stop the growth of the vines easily. Bang, crack. The speed of chopping is far slower than the crazy growth of these things. It's simply impossible to cut them all. Itachi. Kisame swept to the end and was somewhat helplessly convinced by the vines. He shouted with a wry smile towards Itachi's position. Indeed. He dodged while looking at Naruto, who was tightly protected by the thorny vines on the ground. After thinking about it, he ordered Kisame, let's retreat. But there will be a chance next time, Kisame. Okay. Swish, swish. After the two finished talking, they immediately set off and left without any pause or hesitation. Hey. Mengshin kept the seal posture and split an identical self from his body, chasing after them and shouting. Boy, let's stop here today. We'll fight again next time. Kisame put away his sword, threw out two shuriken, and said loudly to Mengshin, who was behind him. Boom, boom. It hit his clone's forehead directly, and the wooden clone fell to the ground with a clang. He heard Kisame's words, and saw Itachi and the others were about to break through the wall at the end of the corridor to escape. This won't work. Mengshin was determined, gritted his teeth, and clasped his hands together, trying his best to increase the input of chakra, driving all the trees, to seal the end of the corridor first. TSK, it's not good. Kisame frowned, looking at the windows that were sealed layer by layer. This side was blocked by his wood escape. It's okay. Itachi closed his eyes and said calmly. Huh. Mengshin on the other side seemed to sense something and hurriedly let go of his hands before he could run a few steps. Boom. Crack. There was a loud noise. Is this the sound of the detonator? Although he judged so, he still strode straight towards them. When he turned the corner of the corridor, he was surprised to find this is. Thank you Pangu Wanchai and Wang and Changli brother for your recommendation votes yesterday. Thank you for your continued support. Chapter 187 Amaterasu. Looking around, at the end of the corridor, a circle of black flames was burning strangely on the edge of the hole that had been blown open. Mengshin carefully noticed that the branches and leaves of his trees were constantly being quickly devoured by the black flames, as if they were burning endlessly, and they were gradually spreading outward. What's going on with this fire? Mengshin did not easily approach the flames, but was far away. Just as he returned to Naruto and Sasuke, he stood there thinking. Bang! A burst of white smoke gushed out from around him. Question mark? Mengshin had a bad premonition in his heart, thinking of a certain wretched figure. TSK, isn't it that guy? Huh. Suddenly he noticed that there were black shadows covering him and falling rapidly around him. He was about to raise his head to look up, but was shocked to find, fuck, boom, bang, A huge monster suddenly appeared in the corridor out of thin air and landed on the ground, and there were waves of vibrations. "You don't know everything about me." A rough and self-proclaimed bold and unrestrained voice sounded in the broken corridor. "A man like Jiraiya, only, hey. The man was standing on the back of a big toad with the word loyalty written on its head. He was about to brag, but suddenly, the ground shook violently. Would release. Great forest technique. A low shout came from below. Crack, crack, crack. Hey, wait a minute. Boom. Crack. The toad was pushed through the ceiling with the man, and it stopped only when it broke through to the third floor, leaving half of its body stuck there. It's crushing me to death. Mingshin stood up, shook his legs and moved, and patted the dust off his body. Which bastard is so stupid, and has no eyes to summon spiritual things? Just as he was about to cut off the chakra with a curse, he looked up, and saw the half hanging above the ceiling. Swish, swish. Wow. What a treat. After breaking through Mingshin's would release, Kisame and Itachi galloped on a small river beside the inn, asking in confusion, "With your strength, you obviously." "Sasuke, after the death of Hokage, there are still Mingshin and Kakashi to protect you. I can rest assured." Itachi was thinking about his own things, and did not neglect Kisame's question. "We don't have to rush to capture Naruto now." After a slight pause, he continued, "Besides, I must find a place to sit quietly, and let my body have a good rest. I have overused my eyes. Oh, how could I forget this?" Kisame suddenly remembered the side effects of Itachi's use of those eyes, and asked with a little apology, "Is it too much for your body now?" "Yeah." Itachi nodded. "Not only did I use Tsukuyomi several times in a day, the blood red 3 Megatama in his eyes returned to the black pupils they usually see. Now even Amaterasu is used. If I don't rest, I understand." Kisame didn't let Itachi finish his words, and looked straight ahead. "Let's take a break first." "Sorry to bother you, Kisame." "Oh, you're always so reserved." When Kisame wasn't paying attention, Itachi quietly glanced at the direction of the hotel behind him. "I'll wait for you, Sasuke." "Boy, you did it on purpose." "Blame me?" In the corridor of a certain hotel, two equally shabby men with dusty faces accused each other. "You were jealous of my handsome appearance, so you deliberately pushed me." One of the white-haired men pointed at the other black-haired boy and said, "Not only did you push me to the ceiling, but you also made my face covered with white ash." He got himself some water to wash his face. "You are such a psychic. How dare you say that?" The young man wiped the dirt off his face with his hands. "I was almost crushed by you. I haven't even settled the score with you yet, but you blame me first." "Jiraiya, why can't you find a better hotel?" Mingshin couldn't help complaining to him. "It's bad enough that you fell from the ceiling, but you also dropped so much white ash. It's really a dog, and I ate a mouthful of dirt. How would I know that this hotel would have such a thing? Besides, it's not your fault. Come on, I won't talk nonsense with you. Hurry up." Mingshin spit out 2 mouthfuls of thick phlegm and urged him. "What are you talking about?" Jiraiya looked at him in confusion. "Wake them up." Mingshin glared at him and pointed at Sasuke and Naruto on the ground. "They are all under illusions. Hurry up. TSK. Jiraiya suddenly got angry for no reason when he heard this and clenched his fists. "What are you standing there for? Hurry up. Boy, I've been tolerating you for a long time. This great immortal. Hey, it seems that some people really don't want the novel Howling in the Wind that I have been thinking about for a long time, and the stars. Hey, it's just to remove an illusion. That's no big deal." Jiraiya smiled naturally and heartily without any pretense, and ran to squat down to work. "Humph." Mingshin looked at the guy with deep contempt, which really proved the saying that a person who is humble is invincible. He shook his head and sighed, turned the corner, and walked straight back to the big hole burned by Itachi at the end. "This black fire is not simple, I'm afraid." After careful observation, he frowned and thought deeply, looking at its burning trajectory on the wooden wall. "It is very different from the ordinary ones. Could it be? Hey, TSK." Mingshin was thinking about his thoughts, and when he was halfway through, he was interrupted by Jiraiya's loud voice. He raised his eyebrows and pretended not to hear. "Hey, come here." As a result, the guy shouted even louder. fearing that he was really deaf and couldn't hear. Shut up. Mingshan turned around dissatisfiedly, walked around the corner, and glared at the guy. What are you doing? I just injected chakra into Naruto and Sasuke, trying to remove the illusion, but the two guys are still unconscious. TSK, so troublesome. Mingshan scratched his head and turned around. Why are you making so much trouble when I asked you to remove an illusion? Oh, I really don't like what you said. Jiraiya was quite unhappy. You can do it. Why don't you try? Hearing this, Mingshan didn't pay any attention to him anymore and continued to talk nonsense, but just walked to the yellow-haired man who looked like he was sleeping soundly. Hiss. He took a deep breath for a long time and then shouted, "Wow, Sakura is running around in the corridor without clothes. Where is she?" The yellow-haired man jumped up, as if someone suddenly hit his butt with an explosive talisman, and shouted, "Where is she? I want to see." Bang. "She's in Konoha, idiot." Mingshan slapped the guy on the back of his head and reminded him fiercely, "Are you awake now? Hey." The yellow-haired man screamed and squatted down with his head covered. "Really?" Jiraiya looked at the two of them speechlessly. His mouth twitched twice and he pouted in frustration. "Is there such a thing? Thank you for the monthly ticket from Brother Mechanical vs God of War. This book has always been written very poorly, and I'm really ashamed that you are still willing to vote for me. I sincerely thank you for your support along the way." Chapter 188 Circle of Fire. Damn it, who hit me? The yellow-haired man just stood up and yelled, wanting to settle the score with the person who slapped him. Unexpectedly, he turned around and saw Mingshan. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't speak. "Ah, you finally woke up, young master." Mingshan yawned and said to him listlessly, "It's really hard to wake you up." "Really?" Jiraiya questioned him in his heart. "TSK, Mingshan, even if you want to wake me up, you don't have to be so cruel." The yellow-haired man protested to him angrily. "Hey, I'm helping you," Mingshan said to the yellow-haired guy seriously. Occasionally patting the head is helpful to promote blood circulation and maximize the expansion of one's thinking. Iruka teacher once taught us that. Have you forgotten it? Hey, did Iruka teacher teach that? Hearing him fooling around like that, the guy was really scratching his head and thinking, why don't I remember? Did he say that? Jiraiya looked at the seaweed-headed guy who continued to pretend to be heartbroken and fool the yellow-haired guy, and he had the urge to teach him a lesson. Suddenly, Mingshan turned his gaze to Jiraiya who was standing aside. "Why are you looking at me? I'm going to wake up Sasuke next. You go to the end of the corridor and collect that circle of black fire first." Black fire? Jiraiya didn't understand for a moment. When he appeared here just now, he only saw that the corridor was covered with layers of trees, and he really didn't see any black fire. "Before, when you were not back yet, I followed Sasuke here." Mingshan told him everything that happened in the hotel. After he finished, Jiraiya suddenly realized, no wonder when I came back, the front desk owner and the salesperson were both in a coma. They were all knocked out by you. This hotel only received you two to register for accommodation today. Okay, stop talking nonsense and get to work. Mingshan raised his hand at the right time, pointed to the corner over there, and signaled him to go over with his eyes, and didn't have time to continue talking nonsense. "TSK, you kid really know how to order people around," Jiraiya said contemptuously, and walked around the corner. He looked up and looked forward, and noticed that the edge of the big hole at the end was indeed a little unusual, and before he could get closer, "Hey, what is this, black flame?" The yellow-haired man who was standing next to them and watching the conversation between the two was also curious, and followed Jiraiya over. After seeing the flame on the wooden wall of the cave entrance, he said, "It's so black." He was about to reach out and touch it. "Be careful, don't get too close," Jiraiya suddenly shouted at him. "Hey." Naruto was startled and turned his head. He rarely saw Jiraiya taking out a small scroll from his arms with a serious face. If what Mingshan said just now is true, how did those guys escape the wood release blockade? Jiraiya thought to himself, and what is this black flame? His brows were furrowed. That kid told me that he had stacked at least 3 layers of thick wooden walls, but it was so easily burned by Itachi and the others. Darn. Forget it, don't think about it for now. It will be very dangerous to keep this black fire here. Take it back quickly while no one notices it. Jiraiya walked past the yellow-haired man and walked straight to the black fire. He spread the scroll flat on the ground and unfolded it. Shap. He picked up a brush dipped in ink and wrote on the paper. Hey, what is a lecherous immortal doing? The yellow-haired man stood beside him and looked down. Unfortunately, after observing for a long time, he still didn't understand. He just felt that the content of these words was quite profound. After a while, okay. Jiraiya finally finished writing, put away the brush immediately, and quickly formed seals with both hands, saying, sealing technique, sealing fire seal. He slapped the ground with one hand, and 4 black arrows appeared in the middle of the paper. In the center of the blank space, a blue airflow suddenly rushed out, and rushed to the circle of burning black flames at the edge of the hole. After wrapping it up, it was brought back to the scroll. The center of the 4 black arrows twisted and turned into a ring. After absorbing the black flames, a red seal appeared in the center. After it was completely drilled in, it cooled and turned black in an instant. Snap, click. Jiraiya immediately rolled up and tied up the scroll and put it in his arms. Okay, this should be fine for now. Toad, are you done over there? He had just finished his work when a voice floated out from behind, and the sound of footsteps became clearer and clearer. I've told you many times, don't always. Jiraiya was about to complain to Mengshin, who walked up to the two of them. Whoosh, whoosh, bang, Mengshin was startled by the sudden attack, and he moved his shoulder away in time to dodge the 3 shuriken that were about to get close, so that all the ninja tools hit the wall behind him. Mengshin didn't have time to turn around and say anything. Bang. He was kicked hard in the cheek by a big foot. Power prelude. A certain proud blue beast, very high-spirited, kicked the enemy in the face directly and fiercely. Just when he was about to brag and show his iconic big front teeth, he heard someone behind him exclaiming, "Hey, why is it you, Mengshin?" The man was stunned at first, and then he looked at the other person carefully with a guilty conscience, and immediately became extremely embarrassed. He quickly put away his kicking legs, and jumped back to the ground. Wow, haha. Jiraiya laughed obscenely. You could also have this day. Cough. Bah. Mengshin rubbed his handsome face, that was swollen from the kick, and complained bitterly, you all did it on purpose. Hey, who knew it would be you standing here? Misunderstanding. I'm glad you're okay. Haha. He was very casual and generous to persuade Mengshin cheerfully. Standing behind him, Guji and Yishan and the others all raised their eyebrows. They couldn't help but complain about this guy in their hearts. Didn't you just lead us to rush into the hotel and yell that you used your forehead protector to spy on the enemy, and you also lied that the man looked wretched? There are always 8 or 9 things in life that are not satisfactory. Mr. K, you can stop exaggerating. Mengshin stared at this guy speechlessly. How did you get together with Captain Yishan and the others? Well, when I was tracking Sasuke and rushed to this Fang Street, I met them on the road. K explained to Mengshin in a very casual manner. He also briefly mentioned what happened after they separated in the Hokage building. He was worried that Sasuke was in danger. After thinking for a long time, he also followed him out of the village. That's right. Tikuno walked out from behind K and echoed, we saw that you hadn't returned yet, so we just walked out to the street, entranced to look for you, and then we ran into Senior K. Chapter 189 Persuading Huang Mao. TSK, this world is really small. Mengshin couldn't help but complain silently in his heart, but he still said on the surface, that's great, Teacher K, can you help Sasuke? He also briefly told everyone what happened in the hotel. I see. After listening to what he said, everyone's expressions became solemn at the same time. K pondered for a long time, looked at Sasuke, who was unaware inside. I didn't expect Itachi to torture his brother so cruelly that he even used Tsukuyomi. When the Uchiha clan tragedy happened that night, I was collecting intelligence in another country with other people and hadn't returned. Yishan closed his eyes and thought deeply, then opened his eyes again. It's really unexpected that Uchiha Itachi would be so powerful. Yeah. K nodded. He half squatted down beside Sasuke to inspect him. The more he looked, the more depressed he became. His arm was broken in 3 places, and his ribs in at least 6 places. Although his eyes are open, he is unconscious. This is very dangerous. There's no way. After all, he was attacked by the mental erosion of the Sharingan illusion. Yishan also half squatted down and said something at the right time. According to what Mingshan said, this kid was probably also hit by the same illusion as Kakashi. K was silent in his heart, afraid that Sasuke would be like Kakashi. Lecherous sage. Naruto interrupted and asked him, can Sasuke be cured? As long as the physical injuries are treated seriously, they can return to normal quickly, but the mental trauma and the blow suffered. Jiraiya stopped talking halfway. However, although he didn't finish his words, when Naruto heard Jiraiya say this, even if his brain was still confused, he understood. Naruto never expected that Sasuke would be injured so badly. It was simply unbelievable. Why, when I woke up, Sasuke became like this? Damn it. He clenched his fists, angry. Asshole, why is this? Huh. Mingshan noticed his subtle change, turned his head, and looked at Naruto who was trembling all over, and asked in surprise, what's wrong with you? Lecherous immortal, let's change the reservation plan. Naruto gritted his teeth and said with determination, although I was really scared when we first met, this time I will definitely catch up with those two guys and settle the score and beat them all down. Isn't their target me? Naruto said to everyone boldly and decisively. Then let's just take the initiative to find them ourselves. TSK, stop it, Naruto. Mingshan heard Naruto say this and didn't give him face and interrupted him directly. With your current strength, even if you go, it will be of no use. Aren't you just going to die in vain? What did you say? Naruto was furious when he heard this. The difference in strength between you is too big. I had a hard time forcing them to retreat. I have made it very clear before. Mingshan said something very harsh, not caring about Naruto's feelings. If I hadn't just happened to follow Sasuke and come to the hotel with him, he said coldly, I'm afraid you would have been kidnapped by Itachi. So, according to you, you want me to hide from them from now on? Naruto was very dissatisfied with Mingshan and got angry. Do I have to live in fear and caution every day like today? Bang. Mingshan didn't say any more nonsense and punched him in the face unexpectedly. Naruto staggered back a few steps in pain and cursed, you bastard. Just as he was about to rush up and fight Mingshan. Naruto, have you had enough? Jiraiya shouted at him, his face solemn, full of sternness to stop him from continuing to lose his temper. Naruto turned his head away unwillingly and turned his face to show them. I'm not trying to be hard on you, but you're just too weak. Mingshan looked at him with a stern face, which was extremely rare. If you don't want to be obstructed and opposed by us all the time, then from now on, you should follow the toad and practice hard and become stronger on your own. So strong that others won't dare to ignore your existence easily. Hey, brat, who are you talking about? Toad? Shut up and don't interrupt. TSK. I know you really want to stand up for Sasuke. Mingshan picked up the Kusanagi sword that had been stuck in the ground when he was busy performing ninjutsu. But only if you make yourself more valuable can you become like a magnet and attract others to fight alongside you, instead of being stubborn and rejecting different opinions. He wiped the sword. Don't blame the enemy for being so hateful. Only when you become truly strong can you no longer be manipulated and controlled by others and give yourself the most real sense of security. Mingshan. Naruto lowered his head in shame. I didn't expect that he could speak so logically and convincingly. After hearing what he said, Takuno sighed deeply and directly refreshed his previous understanding of Mingshan. Haha. Guji looked at Mingshan with a faint smile, nodding from time to time to agree with what he said. This kid is quite interesting. Yishan gave him a deep look of appreciation. TSK. Jiraiya looked at everyone who was stunned by this guy's bluffing and actually believed it all. He was quite dissatisfied and sneered inwardly. It's as if it were true. Don't pout, one less person will say anything to you. Huh. Mingshan turned the gun head around for no reason and pointed it at Jiraiya. Everyone was stunned and puzzled, and then their eyes followed his gaze and looked over. Hey, what does it have to do with me? Jiraiya protested in surprise, cursing at him rudely. Don't bite anyone you catch. If you weren't busy picking up girls, so many things wouldn't have happened. Mingshan directly tore him apart, listing all kinds of original sins. Huh. Everyone was stunned when they heard it. Bullshit. Jiraiya coughed dryly, just when he was about to clear himself up and make excuses. Come to think of it, the lecherous immortal is indeed like this. Unexpectedly, the yellow-haired man suddenly spoke at this point in time, assisting and finishing off the knife, pointing at him and complaining. The beautiful sister in front of him flirted with him, and he was so excited that he coaxed me to stay in the room alone to meditate and practice with an adult tone, while he hugged that beautiful sister, to start the adult world. Hey. Everyone looked at Jiraiya with a strange expression. Of course, they couldn't say anything about this kind of thing, but the way everyone looked at him made him feel very uncomfortable. Ahem. This guy pretended not to hear the yellow-haired guy's sarcasm, and said to Kay in a serious tone, Kay, it's getting late. Please take Sasuke back to Konoha to find the medical team. I understand. After Kay agreed, he looked around, and said goodbye to Yesan and Mingshin. Then I will take Sasuke back first. See you later, everyone. Okay. Goodbye, Senior K. Thanks to bookfriend 201812111433555948 for the recommendation vote yesterday. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190 Parting Ways. Ugh. At sunset, in a dark and deep room somewhere, a man's shrill and hoarse roar came from the inner room. Lord Orochimaru, a ninja on duty outside the door, heard the scream and rushed in subconsciously. You didn't. Unexpectedly. Before the man could finish his words, an extremely narrow and long sword pierced his throat straight through. His body swayed twice, and he was thrown to the ground and died instantly. Ta. There were slight footsteps coming, slowly approaching the door and knocking. Who is it? Orochimaru shouted at the door in a very bad mood. It's me, Lord Orochimaru. I brought you the new medicine. Kabuto. Orochimaru frowned and urged, come in and change it quickly. Okay. Kabuto responded and came in, without even looking at the body lying on the ground. He walked straight to the bedside of Orochimaru, respectfully removed the bandages on his hands, and slowly threw them into the trash can next to the bedside table. Lord Orochimaru, you are too angry now, so you should try not to get angry. Kabuto nodded his glasses and complained teasingly, it's very tiring to clean up and move these waste 3 times a day. Shut up. Orochimaru's face was very gloomy. If you say another word of nonsense, I will kill you now. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Oh, I understand. Kabuto stopped talking and stopped talking about this matter so as not to really anger Orochimaru and be killed on the spot. The room was silent for a long time, and Orochimaru suddenly said to Kabuto, Kidomaru and the others just came to report to me that they have found the trace of that woman. Really? Kabuto looked up at Orochimaru in surprise. HMPH, there are only a few places she likes and often goes to. He looked at Kabuto coldly and said lightly, take care of the chores you have on hand these 2 days and come with me to find her. Lord Orochimaru, in fact, I will go. No need to say more, just do as I say. Okay, I got it. Dusk, Fang Street, near the Soul Fighting House. Then we are leaving, Mingshin. Well, it's just right that we have to leave here and continue our journey. Jiraiya and Naruto carried their bags and stood at the entrance of Fang Street, saying goodbye to Mingshin. Before leaving, Mingshin thought for a while and really didn't know what to say to the 2 guys. They stared at each other, which was too awkward. I'm talking Toad. What for? We must find Tsunade as soon as possible. Sasuke and Kakashi are waiting for her in Konoha. We will find her. The yellow-haired man suddenly interrupted, and bring her back as soon as possible. Yeah. Mingshin heard the words. The corners of his mouth raised a little, and he smiled at Naruto. You kid. Huh. Jiraiya laughed and put one hand on the yellow-haired head. It's always good to be motivated. No wonder. Mingshin put one hand on his waist and scratched his head with the other hand. Kay really likes kids like you who have perseverance. He smiled. When he set out to return to Konoha, he specially gave you that thing. Hey, you talk as if you don't have it. The yellow-haired man took out a green tight jumpsuit from his arms. When the wind blew, it could even sway with it. He pointed out to him unceremoniously, "Didn't the thick-browed teacher also give you one?" Hey. Mingshan heard what he said and actually took out a green tight jumpsuit similar to his from his arms. He carefully looked it up and down and pondered. Don't look at the ugly design, but when it comes to its practicality, it is both breathable and comfortable. Whether it is daily exercise or tracking enemies, it is really convenient and fast. Jiraiya stood aside, listening to them talking, and thought about the picture of the two wearing this green skin. His eyebrows jumped, and he couldn't help but say, "Hey, I say, hey." Hearing this, the two turned their heads to look at him. "Don't study this thing blindly." Jiraiya looked up at the sky and urged, "If you continue to talk nonsense, it will be dark." Okay. The two stopped talking about this topic. Mingshan waved and turned around. "I'm leaving. See you later." Okay. Naruto also turned his back and walked slowly towards the road in another direction with Jiraiya, leaving Fang Street. Have Master Jiraiya and the others left? Yes, they went another way. Mingshan walked back to the team, bowed slightly to everyone, and said with great shame, "I'm so sorry for using up all your money, Captain Hayama, Takuno, old man." "No problem." Hayama stopped, indicating that Mingshan should not keep worrying about it. Guji and Takuno also smiled and shook their heads at Mingshan, telling him that they didn't have to pay it back. "No, it was me who damaged the hotel's facilities." Mingshan still shook his head and insisted stubbornly, "After I go back, I will gradually repay the money I borrowed from you by completing tasks." "Ha, what's the big deal?" Takuno laughed. "If you really feel so bad, just treat us to a big meal as a return gift." Haha. Guji smiled and said nothing, just nodded. "Really, this guy Takuno?" Yishan let him make this suggestion to Mingshan, and smiled bitterly. "Tomorrow, let's do as he said. After the mission is over, I'll ask you to treat us to a meal. You really don't have to pay." Seeing that the captain had said so much, he couldn't continue to insist, and followed the crowd and said, "Well, okay. Everyone, it's getting late. Let's go." Yishan looked up at the sky and said to everyone, "Understood." Swish, swish. The team left Fang and continued to head north. A light breeze blew by, and a dead leaf spun and flew into a cold and dark nest somewhere and lost its trace. According to the reports of Scorpion and Deidara, they have roughly confirmed that the Sound Village was founded by Orochimaru. In the nest, next to the campfire, several holographic colorful black shadows were discussing in secret, and one of them, a man with purple circle eyes, said this to everyone. "Hey, it's really him." A frivolous voice sounded on the left side of the man with purple ring eyes, asking him, "Chief, our current location is very close to the land of rice. Do we need to?" "No, let's put the matter of Orochimaru aside for the time being." Before he finished speaking, the man with purple ring eyes flatly rejected his suggestion and said, "There are other things to deal with today." Okay. As soon as the voice fell, two colorful black shadows flashed beside the campfire. "Hey, why are you here now, Kasame?" Turning his head, the voice looked at Kasame and the other man who were late and asked teasingly. Chapter 191 Under the Starry Night. "I was delayed on the way," Kasame explained, and then asked him casually, "Hidden, aren't you and Kaku going to the kingdom of the anchovies to carry out a mission? Why are you here today?" We can talk about small talk later. Let's talk about business first." The purple circled eyes interrupted their conversation. "Understood." After the two nodded in response, they didn't say anything more and stood quietly aside. "Itachi, how is the situation on this trip to Konoha?" Although the third Hokage is dead, Konoha's overall strength has not been damaged too much. It is loose on the outside, but tight on the inside, and the security is very strict. Itachi reported to everyone truthfully. At present, the Ninetales Jinchuriki is under the personal supervision and protection of Jiraiya, one of the three ninjas. He and the Jinchuriki go out of the village to practice together. After a slight pause, he continued, "We tried to capture the Ninetales halfway, but unfortunately we failed. Now it will be a bit tricky to capture it again. HMM." After hearing the words, the purple circled eyes closed their eyes and thought deeply for a moment. After listening to Itachi's report, "Let's put the matter of the Jinchuriki aside for now, and there is no rush. We will deal with it later." Now there are more urgent things that we need to deal with first. Okay. Itachi responded to the leader calmly. Now that most people have arrived, then, next, I will assign other. Under the reflection of the bonfire, the purple circle dice issued commissions to everyone one by one, and explained the specific details of the task. Whoosh, whoosh. Under the starry sky, a team shuttled through the grass in the forest. Dung. After jumping onto a big tree, Yishan paused, looked around the surrounding environment, and pondered for a while. At this time, the night was romantic. The sun had completely set, and the road ahead was not very bright. It was pitch black. If they wanted to continue on their way, it would obviously not be realistic. What's wrong, Captain Yishan? Takuno and Mengshan jumped to the trees around Yishan and stopped to ask him. Well, he retracted his thoughts, turned around and said to everyone, let's stop here today. We will camp here to rest for one night and continue on our way after dawn. Okay. Everyone agreed. Tomorrow, you will be responsible for helping to guard the periphery. Yishan instructed him. Understood. Then I will go to the nearby area to collect usable ingredients and prepare dinner for everyone. Before the captain spoke, Guji took the initiative to say to Yishan. Okay, then I'll trouble Mr. Guji. Yishan responded to him politely. Hey, I'll also set up traps around us to prevent the enemy from sneaking in and attacking us. Takuno also volunteered to the captain. Okay. Yes, Han nodded in agreement and jumped directly under a big tree. He drew out his knife from his waist and quickly chopped off the branches and leaves of the shrubs growing around it to collect wood for the bonfire. In this way, everyone worked for a long time. Tomorrow, Takuno, Captain Yes Han, you can have dinner. After saying that, Guji reached into the iron pot that was constantly rolling and steaming and used a spoon to steadily scoop up the fragrant thick soup and then gradually put it in 4 large bowls. Swish, swish. Yes Han and Takuno heard Guji shout and returned to the temporary camp. Wow, it smells so good. Takuno couldn't help but say as he walked. Haha, don't worry, we have everything. HMM. Yes Han looked around. What about tomorrow? After searching for a long time, he didn't see where he went. He said he would stay in the tree for a while, so let's eat first. Takuno said to Yes Han. When he heard Guji calling for dinner, he ran to find Mengshan, but was politely declined. He took the initiative to say that he would continue to stand guard and stay a little longer. This kid Mengshan. Guji held a bowl of hot soup in his hand. Captain Yes Han. Takuno, I have divided the soup. You all sit down and eat first. Okay. I'll go get him the soup and come back after that. After saying that, he walked straight and carefully carried it, passed between the two people, and walked towards a big tree in the distance. He came to the bottom and shouted upwards, Mengshan. Huh. Mengshan glanced down and thought to himself, why is the old man here? Swish. The whole person jumped straight down from above, touched the tree trunk with his toes, and landed delicately beside Guji. Grandpa, why are you here? I'm bringing you soup. Guji said with a smile, and handed the thick soup with a lot of wild delicacies to Mengshan, and said with concern, eat it while it's hot. Thank you, Grandpa. Mengshan reached out to take it, and after sniffing the hot steam coming out of the bowl, he guessed about 70% of the contents of the soup, and smiled at Guji. The ingredients in the soup are very rich, including bamboo fungus, oyster mushrooms, Toria grandis, pheasant meat, etc. Wow, amazing, you guessed them all. Guji nodded in appreciation at first, but then said, but what? There's something in it that you didn't guess. Oh, what is it? Pine nuts. Mengshan suddenly understood what he said and smiled at Guji. He leaned against the tree behind him, brought the soup to his mouth, blew away the heat, and tasted it. HMM. Old man, you have mastered the heat of this soup just right. The pheasant meat is tender, smooth and chewy. He gave him a thumbs up and praised him generously. Haha, it's not as good as you said. Guji heard it and shook his head modestly. Okay. Mengshan picked up a pine nut in the bowl with chopsticks and said to him, old man, you should go back and eat soon. Well, I know. Guji turned around and left and reminded him, there is still a lot in the pot. If you are not full, you can come and get some more. Got it. Thank you, old man. After saying that, Mingshan watched Guji leave him and return to the bonfire. He left the tree directly. He walked out from under the tree with the hot soup and looked up at the starry sky alone. What a beautiful night view, but it's a pity that he can no longer watch it with me like before. Mingshan stared at the starry sky for a long time, with an indelible sadness in his eyes. He murmured to himself, remember, it seems that my high school history teacher said that people who carry a bag are just passers-by. When they put down their burdens, they find their hometown. After a long time, he retracted his gaze and suddenly chuckled to himself, why should I be sad? I'd better live in the present honestly. I'll pay off the money I owe to others, and then I'll be full of emotion. After thinking of this, Mingshan picked up the soup, tilted his neck and slowly drank it. At the same time, at the northern border far away from him, at this moment, Chen Mao Yin, a Konoha ninja with injuries to all the vital parts of his body, was seriously raising his hands to make seals and whispered, fire style, dragon fire technique. A long flame spurted out from his mouth, quickly spreading along the steel wire and running towards the two enemies who were tied up tightly. Puff. Kai. Ah. Chapter 192 Land. Amid the enemy's screams, the flames gradually died out. Boom, boom. The Konoha ninja swiftly avoided the shuriken that flew through the air from behind him. He didn't stop for a moment. Whoosh. He immediately spit out the thread he was biting and jumped away from the spot. Swish, swish. Almost as soon as he left, 3 or 4 ninjas wearing red tights, vests, and Iwagakure forehead protectors came running to the scene. They looked at the 2 companions who were burned to death and were very angry. Damn it, I don't believe we can't catch him. One of them clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Let's chase him. He's so badly injured that he can't run far. Understood. The group immediately dispersed to search in various places in the forest. Cough. Not long after the man fled the scene, he couldn't help but coughing with his hands covering his mouth, and blood flowed out from between his fingers. I wonder if Yanshu and the others have escaped now? This Konoha ninja was the captain who had chosen to go alone to lure away the enemy. At this moment, he was seriously injured. No matter how good he was at fighting, he could not withstand the opponent's continuous wheel attacks, which consumed too much chakra. The captain trembled and fumbled out the few remaining ration pills from his arms, bit them open, and chewed them twice, and looked around vigilantly, praying in his heart, I hope they have released the falcon to report the news. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Found him. He's here. A Iwagakure ninja found him on a tree in front of him under the moonlight, and shouted to his companions behind him. TSK. Without time to think about anything else, the captain subconsciously jumped away quickly. Damn, they are chasing so closely. Swish, whoosh. Somewhere far away from the captain, 3 Konoha ninjas were hiding on the treetops in the forest, carefully avoiding the Iwagakure troops passing by them. Yanshu, are you sure the falcon has been released? One of them turned his head and asked his companions in a low voice after the enemy went far away. Yes, it was released. Just now, when you threw the smoke bomb, I ran to a distance and released the falcon to the village. Yanshu answered his companions with a serious face. That's good. After confirming that the message had been delivered, the man breathed a sigh of relief and discussed with others, let's go back to help the captain now. What? Yanshu was shocked when he heard it. The captain asked us. He told us to report what happened here to the village in time, but the 2 companions checked the few remaining equipment they carried. He didn't say that after the information was delivered, we are not allowed to send people back to rescue him. Yanshu, for the sake of caution, in order to prevent the falcon from delivering the information to the village in time, you continue to hurry back, and the 2 of us will go to rescue the captain. Another companion also spoke to him at the right time. What? Yanshu shook his head decisively when he heard this. No, if we want to save him, we will go together. Hey, Yanshu, don't argue with us. His companions persuaded him kindly before he finished his objection. We are not as smart as you know. You guys. Yanshu, please. His companions put their hands on his shoulders and said solemnly. In the early morning, at dawn, the outside of the camp was humid and the water vapor was very heavy. Yishan was standing quietly on the treetop, looking far ahead. In the second half of the night, He took over the night watch tomorrow, let him go down to rest, and he stood there until dawn. A few rays of morning sun were sparsely scattered among the branches and leaves, and the air was infected with the fragrance of green grass, and birds chirped happily from time to time. After a while, everyone gradually woke up from their sleep. Yishan heard a noise under the tree, looked down, jumped down, and walked back to the camp. Captain Yeshan. Takuno stood up, stretched his body, and greeted him with a yawn. Are you all awake? Yeah. Mingshan nodded and rubbed his sleepy eyes. Thank you for your hard work, Captain. No problem. After saying that, Yeshan looked around and said to everyone, just clean up the camp. We will leave soon. Understood. Several people all started to get busy. It only took a moment to clean up everything in the camp. Swish, swish. The team set off again and headed towards the destination. There was no conversation along the way. At dusk that day, several members of the team passed by the fire temple. Everyone. Yeshan suddenly stopped and called everyone. What's wrong, Captain Yeshan? Takuno stopped to ask in confusion. Look. Yeshan didn't say much, but just pointed everyone to the gate of the temple. How could this happen? Guji and Takuno exclaimed. What's wrong? Mingshan didn't understand for a moment and was confused. He looked towards the temple and saw two huge main doors there, half of which were broken by human beings. He widened his eyes and subconsciously said, this door. Swish, swish. Mingshan had just started to speak when many monks suddenly rushed out from their left and right and surrounded them. Who are you? A monk asked fiercely. Don't be impulsive, everyone. We are ninjas from Konoha village. Yishan suddenly spoke calmly and explained to the monks who surrounded them. Konoha. Hearing this, a young man with a deep voice walked out of the crowd of monks who surrounded the team. After seeing them, he said in surprise, Yishan, Mr. Guji, why are you here? Hey, who are you? Yishan forgot for a moment and didn't immediately remember who the person in front of him was. Instead, he was. Are you Dilu? Guji looked the monk up and down and couldn't help but smile at him. It's only been 2 years since we last met and you've become more and more like a host. No, it's been a long time, Mr. Guji. Dilu said modestly and politely to him. You are Dilu. After Guji mentioned this, Yishan finally remembered. It's you. Yes, it's me, Senior Yishan. Dilu smiled and nodded, and after a few polite words with him, Dilu turned around and said to everyone, they are indeed ninjas from Konoha village, not the ones we met before. Oh. After hearing what Dilu said, the monks gradually let down their guard and were no longer as aggressive as before. Takuno looked at Dilu with confusion and asked him, did anything happen in the temple before? Well, let's not talk about it. Ludi didn't intend to tell them in detail, but just changed the subject and said, Senior Yishan, Mr. Guji, where are you going? Chapter 193 Staying at the Fire Temple. Recently, there have been frequent harassment from enemies at the border of the Fire Country, and we need to send more people to patrol the northern border. Yishan answered him succinctly, so this time, I specially invited Mr. Guji to help us go north. I see. Ludi nodded, and then he looked up at the sky and said to everyone, it's getting late. If it's convenient for you, stay in the temple tonight and set off for the north tomorrow. Yishan was quite hesitant when he heard Dilu's arrangement. He wanted to decline his kindness and continue on his way, but he didn't know how to start. At this moment, Captain Yishan, Guji rarely took the initiative to speak to him. Let's stay in the fire temple for one night. Takuno and Mingshan were both very surprised and looked over. After leaving the fire temple, it will only take 1 day to reach the north border post. Guji explained to everyone, even if we stay at the fire temple tonight, it will not conflict with the execution time stipulated in the mission. After hearing what Guji said, Takuno really counted the time with his fingers. After a while, he said in surprise, hey, I just carefully considered it, and it is really the same as what Mr. Guji said. There is no need to count with your fingers, brother. Mingshan silently complained about Takuno in his heart. Afterwards, everyone stood there and chatted for about half a cup of tea, and then walked into the temple with Dilu. On the way, when Mingshan passed the main gate, he subconsciously asked Dilu who was walking in front, Master Dilu, HMM. He turned around and looked at Mingshan. What's the matter, Mingshan? I want to ask, why is the main gate of your temple so badly damaged? Mingshan pointed to the 2 broken doors and asked. Oh, that was last year. A young monk standing beside Dilu was about to answer Mingshan's question. Ahem. Ludi suddenly covered his hand to his mouth and coughed intriguingly with his eyes closed. Seeing this, the young monk, who was about to say something, closed his mouth again in an unusually tacit cooperation. The door was damaged by a group of thieves who came to the temple to make trouble last year. Because the funds have not been raised yet, it has been left unattended, and it has become what you see now. Dilu looked up at the main door between the stone statues on both sides and explained to them briefly. Is it possible that the thieves are bored and go to the temple to deliberately destroy this main door? Mingshan was very suspicious. His intuition told him that things were not as simple as Ludi said on the surface. Although he thought so in his heart, he couldn't force the other party to tell the truth if he didn't say it. Mingshan glanced at the other teammates and found that they all had similar thoughts as him, but they didn't say anything. By the way, Dilu, are you still in touch with your former guardian ninja companions? Guji was very suitable to ask Dilu, diverting everyone's attention from the gate. No. Dilu shook his head. After the incident with Kazuma, we completely disbanded the guardian ninja. Kazuma, guardian ninja? Mingshan turned to look at Guji and Ludi who were talking, thinking, it seems that he is not just a monk in the temple. I will find time to ask the old man alone in the evening. After making up his mind, he continued to follow everyone into the temple courtyard. Fang Zhu, come and help, lead senior Yishan and others to the guest room to rest. Dilu casually instructed a fat man with glasses, who was sweeping the floor in the courtyard. Hey, Fang Zhu? Mingshan's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Okay, Master Dilu. The man put the broom on the side of the well, ran to them, and introduced himself very stiffly. Hello everyone, it's our first time to meet. I'm Tono Fang Zhu. Hello, thank you for your guidance, little master. Yishan and the others nodded slightly, and responded to him. I still have some things to deal with, Senior Yishan. Mr. Guji, I will go to the guest room to find you later. Dilu said to the 2 of them with a little apology. It's okay, you can go and do your things first. Yishan said with understanding, and Guji also nodded in agreement. Well, when it's time to eat, I will let Fang Zhu come and take you there. After Dilu finished speaking, he told the man next to him. I understand, Master Dilu. Fang Zhu nodded. Then Ludi went to the main hall with several other monks. Just as Fang Zhu was about to lead everyone to the guest room excitedly, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar stranger in the team and subconsciously blurted out in surprise, hey, you are Mingshan? Mingshan? Yishan heard this and turned his head back to look at Mingshan. You are really Fang Zhu? Mingshan smiled bitterly and waved to him in response. Mingshan. Fang Zhu saw that it was really him and shouted happily, ran to Mingshan and hugged him generously. Takuno and Guji were very surprised to see the 2 of them like this, and asked, do you 2 know each other? Well, it's a long story. After the 2 of them released their hug, Mingshan said to his gay friend, Fang Zhu, take us to the temple guest room first, and we can talk later, if we have anything to say. Okay. Fang Zhu grinned and nodded. He quickly led Yishan and others to the guest room, and after assigning each room one by one, he asked everyone to go in and rest for a while, and then come to call them when it's time to eat. Mingshan, are you okay? After settling the others, Fang Zhu went straight to Mingshan's room to chat with him. A lot of things happened when I returned to Konoha this time. Mingshan wiped the Kusanagi sword while telling Fang Zhu with deep emotion about the things that happened after he came back. I didn't expect that so many things happened after you took the information back. Fang Zhu sighed after listening to him patiently. Your brother, Kimimaro. It's all over. I'm fine. Mingshan said with a calm smile. He put the Kusanagi sword back into the sheath. Look, you're always talking about me. He poured Fang Zhu a glass of water. You haven't told me why you suddenly appeared in this temple. Weren't you going to stay in the land of craftsmen to learn crafts? Fang Zhu couldn't help but sighed when he heard him mention this. You don't know. Fang Zhu roughly talked about the experiences he encountered after parting with him at that time. After listening to his experiences, Mingshan didn't know how to express his feelings. Is there something wrong with my ears? After holding it in for a long time, he subconsciously asked himself, hey, what's wrong? Fang Zhu didn't understand what was going on. What do you mean your ears are broken? Chapter 194 My grandson. You said that, after we left that day, you were on your way to the artisan village alone, and you met a 10-year-old girl squatting on the side of the dirt road crying. She helplessly told you about her family's extremely tragic experience? Yes, my grandson's family is really... Wait a minute, you just said it. Before Fang Zhu finished his nonsense, Mingshan's mouth twitched several times in succession. I already know that their family is very miserable. He still couldn't help it, but you don't have to spend all the money I gave you on her family, right? Hey, you don't understand how bad her family's situation is. At that time, if you hadn't left early, Fang Zhu shook his head. If you had seen it on the spot, you would definitely feel sorry for it. Only a ghost would feel sorry for it. Mingshan cursed in his heart. I think you kid has been fooled. He smiled awkwardly and didn't say anything, watching Fang Zhu continue to chatter. Her eldest brother, my grandson K, was hospitalized due to severe hemorrhoids, so he lost too much blood when wiping his butt with rough paper. It was so pitiful his brother was just hospitalized because of hemorrhoids. How pitiful is that? Her second brother, my grandson Zhu, was hospitalized because the sow he raised died during childbirth. He was so sad that he fell into a coma and is still lying in the hospital. It's so unfortunate a second brother was hospitalized because the sow was dystocia. Most likely he just fainted from anger. Do you have to exaggerate like that? Her third brother, my grandson Kun, was laughed at by the villagers for having a very ugly seaweed hairstyle. He couldn't get over it and ran away from home. He hasn't returned yet. It's so pitiful. Her third brother. Hey, we have seaweed hairstyle. What do you mean, you fat guy? Why are we so ashamed to be seen, bastard? While Fang Zhu was sympathizing with Woohoo's misfortune, Mingshan had been silently cooperating with him, complaining in his heart. His complaints were almost off the charts. After chatting for a while, he finally stopped, because he had complained about everyone in her family. He also doubted whether such a weird surname could exist in Japan. Xiaomi has a hard time hearing this. Seeing Fang Zhu's attitude and intending to continue talking like this, he really couldn't stand it and quickly gritted his teeth and said, I say, if you are full of sympathy and kindly help this child to advance her brother's hospitalization fees, it's fine. I can understand, but... The next sentence, Mingshan bluntly complained about this guy. Her eldest cousin, my grandson Ji, is treating athlete's foot. Her second cousin, my grandson Ni, is treating baldness. And her third cousin, my grandson Tae, is treating corns. You also paid money to advance the medical expenses of these three aunts, which I can't understand. Well, since we want to help others, we must help them to the end. Fang Zhu scratched his head and said nonchalantly, it's over. You don't take my word seriously at all. Mingshan sighed in his heart. There's no hope for this guy. My grandson Mei, how difficult must her family be? His eyebrows jumped. I almost told you that she's going to sell herself to bury her parents. Hey, don't talk nonsense, Mingshan. She's already weird and pitiful enough. Mingshan was stunned to listen to him say this. His expression was as if he was looking at a mentally retarded person, and he had to hold back the curse words in his stomach, not daring to say them out loud, for fear that they would hurt his sensitive glass heart. How depressing it was. Well, forgive me for being blunt. Mingshan shook his head. He poured himself a glass of water and said to Fang Zhu very patiently, I really don't see how miserable her family is. Her brother and sister are not suffering from any incurable disease. Do you have to be so compassionate? Alas, you are too unsympathetic, Mingshan. Hearing this, the fat man just sighed in pain and looked at him. Fuck. Mingshan saw him like this and shook his head at himself. He had the urge to drag this fat guy out of the temple and beat him up. to wake up his pig brain. Humph, you paid her so much real money for free, and you only got an empty thank you in return. Mingshan criticized him very snobbishly. You worked so hard, but you didn't get any benefit at all. Hey, I didn't help her for awards. I really didn't help her with so many crooked intentions. To be honest, the little beauty is also very good. Fang Zhu tried to defend her to Mingshan. When I helped her pay off the medical expenses, she actually gave me. She gave you her ancestral treasure as a gift to thank me, right? Before Fang Zhu finished his sentence, Mingshan had already guessed the routine behind it and said to him expressionlessly, well, she gave me something, but this guy actually nodded and took out a scroll from his arms. It can't be said to be an heirloom. According to Xiaomi herself, she found it by chance when she was playing hide and seek with her friends, hiding in a cave in a big tree. Because she is illiterate, she can't understand what is written in it. After Mingshan heard it, he subconsciously speculated maliciously, why do I feel that you, a fool, have been completely fooled? Of course, he just complained in his heart and didn't say it to Fang Zuming in person. The content of this scroll. Fang Zhu just put the thing on the table and was about to talk about the content of the scroll, but he only heard, hey, Fang Zhu, where are you? Lord Dilu wants to see you. A monk's voice suddenly sounded outside the door, calling him in the open space in the courtyard. I'll be there right away. Fang Zhu had to answer the caller first, and then said to Mingshan, take a good rest in the guest room Mingshan, and I'll come back to see you when it's time for dinner. Yeah, I see. Alas, you really should have come to the fire temple to become a monk earlier. Mingshan opened the door and said this heartbreaking words to Fang Zhu before he left. Hey, why? Fang Zhu looked at him puzzledly. You have such a kind heart. Those Yaksha evil spirits that the village used to talk about will be scared away by you. Mingshan opened his dead fish eyes and praised Xian openly and secretly. Oh, really? Fang Zhu just smiled, turned his head, and left with the monk who was waiting for him in the open space in the courtyard. After watching Fang Zhu leave, Mingshan returned to the table, his eyes constantly staring at the yellowed scroll he left behind. What on earth is this? Mingshan speculated with a mean heart. Could it be that someone just picked it up from the cesspool to trick Fang Zhu? Still unable to resist his curiosity, he stretched out his hand and casually spread out the scroll, but unexpectedly, squeak. Fuck. Mingshan had just unfolded the scroll, and the poor quality scroll was actually broken by him. Chapter 195, Copying by Lamplight. Damn it, why am I so unlucky? Mingshan looked at the yellowed torn page in his hand, and said with a sad face, it's really fucked up. What should I do? He gritted his teeth and sat there thinking hard for a long time. It was almost dark. Finally, he sighed helplessly and thought, forget it, I can hand copy a new one for him, isn't it okay? Seeing that it was getting dark outside, Mingshan lit the oil lamp on the table for lighting. The flames immediately burned up and crackled. Hey, let me see. Mingshan took out a brand new blank scroll and writing tools from his waist bag, spread them out side by side on the table, and just as he was about to write with a brush, he silently recited the contents of the yellowed paper page. I'm a nobody, my name is not worth mentioning, I was once the last guard beside the Hokage. Mingshan didn't care at first, thinking that this was just the struggle history of an unknown otaku in Konoha, but as he read, he became more and more surprised. He carefully copied the contents of the scroll while browsing. When he copied to the end, TSK, what this guy wrote in the scroll is too ridiculous, right? Mingshan read it carefully by lamplight, wondering, I really doubt whether this guy has also watched Infernal Affairs. Because the contents described in his scroll were very similar to those in the movies in his previous life, he admired it very much. His life is also magnificent. As a cloud ninja, he was secretly sent to Konoha as an undercover by the big shots in the village. Since he was a child, he lurked for 3 years and 3 years. When it was almost 10 years, he was still favored by Hashirama, and then, dang. At this moment, a rapid knock on the door outside abruptly interrupted his soliloquy. Tomorrow. Tikuno's voice floated in from outside the door. TSK. Tomorrow had no choice but to collect his thoughts first and then sigh and nag later, and asked outside the door, "What's wrong, Takuno? Do you have the domestic route map of Captain Yishan? It seems to be left here with me. Please wait a moment." As he said that, Tomorrow took out a neatly folded paper map from his leg bag. He stood up and walked to the door, opened the door, and handed the map to Takuno. "Here, I found it." Sorry. It's okay." After chatting with him for a few more words, Takuno turned around and walked towards the room where Yishan was. After watching Takuno leave, Mingshan looked up at the night sky and muttered, "There are no stars at night. It seems that tomorrow's weather will not be very good." He shook his neck a few times, making a creaking sound. I was too focused on copying. My neck is sore, but I didn't feel anything at all. Haha. Returning to the house, he put the copied scroll on the table and planned to put it away after the ink dried. So, what should I do with this scroll now? Mingshan took the damaged scroll in his hand and pondered. TSK, I can't just tear it up and use it to wipe my butt like I did when I was a kid, right? He was a little worried. I'm very constipated recently. If I use this to wipe my butt, will it become more serious? Just as he was sighing and shaking his head, the door was suddenly pushed open by someone. Who? He turned his eyes away and looked. It's me, Fang Zhu. Oh, you're here. Mingshan, let me tell you. As the fat man pushed up his glasses and walked into the room, he saw Mingshan pacing back and forth beside the table and asked in confusion, "Hey, what are you doing?" He awkwardly handed the scroll in his hand to Fang Zhu. "The front part of this scroll. I accidentally tore it hard." "Oh, so, I see." Mingshan was surprised by his reaction. "The scroll was torn by me." "It's okay, it's broken." Fang Zhu pushed up his glasses that had slipped down to his nose. "I read the contents of the scroll a long time ago, and I also copied it down and saved it." After hearing what he said, Mingshan felt sick and cursed secretly. Fuck, didn't I work in vain? Fang Zhu, who didn't know the truth, saw that his face suddenly looked very bad, thinking that he was hungry, so he coughed dryly and said to him, "Mingshan, let's go quickly. Senior Yishan and the others are waiting outside, and we are going to have dinner together." "Okay." Mingshan curled his lips helplessly, put away the scroll on the table, blew out the lights, and followed him to the yard to join Yishan and the others in the cafeteria to have dinner. "Mingshan, you're here," Guji said to him with a smile. "Well, I kept you waiting for a long time." Mingshan walked up to the captain and the others, scratching his head embarrassedly. "It doesn't matter, we just came here to wait for you." Yishan stopped. "Everyone is here, let's go." Fang Zhu, please lead the way. "No, this way please." He turned sideways and guided everyone to another gravel path. On the way, Mingshan approached Guji and whispered to him, "Grandpa, how did you get to know Master Dilu?" His gossipy heart was aroused. "I see he is quite respectful to you." Haha, that was all in the past. Guji just smiled and said to him, not intending to elaborate, "Well, it seems that the old man doesn't want to talk about it, so forget it. After dinner, when I invite him to my room alone, I will change to ask something else." Mingshan saw this and thought to himself. Under the leadership of Fang Zhu, the four of them soon arrived at the entrance of the crowded cafeteria. He turned around and said, "Senior Yishan, this is the place to eat dinner. Please enjoy." "Thank you, brother. I'm sorry to bother you." Takuno said to him politely. "No, this is what I should do. You go in first." Fang Zhu said, and was about to leave. "Hey, aren't you going in with us to eat?" Mingshan asked puzzled. "I still have some things to do. I'll eat later. You guys go eat first." "Okay." After Fang Zhu left, Yishan and the others filed into the cafeteria and saw Dilu was there. After they all lined up to receive their meals, they discussed for a while, then simply took the meals and walked over to sit at the table with him to eat. However, during the meal, everyone talked very little until they finished eating and walked out of the cafeteria. They began to chat gradually. There are so many broken rules in this temple. The monks are very strict about not talking about food. Mingshan complained in his heart, looking at the backs of everyone. He called to Guji, "Old man. Guji turned around and looked at him. What's wrong? If it's convenient later, come to my room. There are some ninjutsu that I don't understand, and I want to ask you. Okay, it's still early now, let's go now. Guji heard it and said quickly, okay. Mingshan nodded, smiled slightly, and made an inviting gesture. Chapter 196, Night Talk. Hey. Tikuno yawned as he watched the two people leave. We've been traveling all day. It's rare that we have a place to stay tonight. We don't have to camp outside anymore. I'll go back and have a good sleep. Thinking of this, he retracted his gaze and didn't plan to follow them out of curiosity. After Mingshan and the others left, Yishan was invited by Dilu to sit in another pavilion in the temple. The two of them left soon after. Mingshan, what do you want to ask? Guji asked Mingshan as soon as he followed him into the house. Grandpa, I actually just want to ask you about the matter you just talked about. Mingshan walked to the table, casually relit the lights to illuminate the dark room, and said to him straight to the point. Just now at the main entrance, you and Master Dilu talked about the Guardian Ninja. What kind of organization is that? Oh, do you really want to know the origin of the Guardian Ninja? Yeah. Mingshan nodded. Of course, if it is inconvenient for the old man to answer, you can. No. Guji shook his head first, then smiled and said, you really want to know? Hey, did you figure it out? Yeah. He did not deny. Just now on the road, when you asked me about my relationship with Dilu, I was guessing in my heart that you must have a lot of things to ask me, but we were halfway on the road and there were many people talking, so it was not convenient for me to explain in detail. Then, old man, can you tell me what kind of organization the Guardian Ninja is? Mingshan moved two stools over, leaned his back against the table, and stretched out his hand to invite Guji to sit next to him. Seriously speaking, the Guardian Ninja is not some mysterious organization. Its full name is the 12 Guardian Ninjas, which are composed of 12 elite ninjas who are specifically responsible for protecting the daimyo of the Land of Fire. They can also be regarded as the daimyo's private independent force. They are very powerful. Their unique symbol is the loincloth with the word fire on its waist, the same as the one worn by Jalu. Guji gave Mingshan a detailed introduction. The second son of the third Hokage, Asuma Sarutobi, also belonged to this organization like Jalu. Teacher Asuma has also participated in this? This surprised Mingshan. Didn't Dilu mention Kazuma? He was one of them back then. Guji's eyes wandered slightly, and he turned his gaze to the corner of the room. After pondering for a while, he continued, in the beginning, the Guardian Ninjas were actually small groups spontaneously formed by passionate young people who shared the same ideals and clamored all day long to contribute their meager efforts to the Fire Country. Later, as they continued to grow and develop, their action philosophy was accidentally known by the daimyo, who then praised them and openly announced them as one of the official ninja organizations of the Fire Country. It's just a pity that later, as time went by, the righteous ideals that originally organized this group, the 12 Guardian Ninjas, gradually changed. Huh, you're still the same as before. You don't like to listen to the old man slowly revealing things. No, old man, don't get me wrong. I just habitually guessed the subsequent plot one step ahead. You continue, and I promise not to interrupt anymore. You. Guji and Mingshan looked at each other and smiled. It's really not much different from what you said. Later, due to the escalation of internal conflicts, the 12 Guardian Ninjas were inevitably torn into the conservative faction headed by Asuma and the radical faction headed by Kazuma. When he said this, his expression was a little solemn. In order to transform the Far Country into a thorough military power, the radical faction secretly planned to instigate members to attack and assassinate the daimyo 10 years ago. After Asuma and others learned of this shocking intelligence, they forcibly stopped it. The two sides clashed violently, resulting in a large number of casualties among their members. The 12 Guardian Ninjas were also revoked of their recognition by the daimyo and completely disbanded because of this failed armed coup. I see. Mingshan sighed. After listening to Guji's story, he turned his back to Guji and said, Grandpa, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it or not. Just say it, it's okay. What's the point of fighting to the death for such an illusory belief in justice? Mingshan stood up, walked to the window and opened it. Sometimes, I really can't understand those people. Because you are not in it, Mingshan. Just like power and money, the two are not illusory things. Guji started from another perspective and patiently analyzed for him behind him. The reason why they pursue those things is just to live a happier and more fulfilling life. No one is born a fool. Really? Mingshan did not choose to refute, but looked up at the night sky. Maybe, my thoughts have always been on being a mediocre and useless otaku, and I have never thought about so much. A useless man. Guji listened and smiled meaningfully. Mingshan, can I ask you a question in return? Please tell me, old man, why did you want to be a ninja in the first place? Why? Hearing the old man's question, Mingshan turned around and thought seriously for a moment before saying, maybe it's because of Kimimaro. Oh. When I said goodbye to Elder Jero in the Land of Tea, I was just planning to make a living in various towns in the Land of Fire. Choosing to be a ninja can be said to be a very accidental thing. Mingshan walked back to the table, sat down, and looked at the candlelight. It can be said that Kimimaro and I, and later Hotaru, are not very special. We are trying our best to become ninjas for some reason. Is that so? I finally understand. Upon hearing this, Guji just smiled slightly, turned around, put his hands on the table, and said to Mingshan with admiration, Mingshan, in my nearly 50 years of career as a genin, it is no exaggeration to say that you are the most unpredictable person I have ever met. Is that so, old man? Just as Guji was about to shake his head and say something to him, suddenly, he caught a glimpse of a special yellowed paper page that Mingshan had forgotten to pick up under the copper lamp. He was afraid that he had misjudged it, so he quickly reached out and observed it carefully. Grandpa? Mingshan looked at him puzzledly and picked up the half of the paper on the table that he had not had time to throw away. How do you have this thing? After repeatedly identifying it for a moment, Guji asked Mingshan for no reason, do you know what this is? Mingshan didn't understand it for a moment. He really didn't know, and subconsciously said, isn't this just a... Guji didn't wait for him to finish. He raised his hand to stop the words that followed, frowned, and ordered, take this in your hand first. As he said that, the old man handed the paper page to him. Grandpa, what are you? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197, The Book of Blue Light. First, inject chakra into this half of the paper. Guji did not explain, but asked Mingshan to cooperate with him. Oh, okay. Mingshan half believed and half doubtedly injected some of his chakra into the yellowed paper after hearing what Guji said. Suddenly, a surprising scene appeared. This is the originally yellowed half of the page. As chakra continued to flow in, the ink words inside were actually moving rapidly, and the paper itself was also changing from yellow to white, but because of the incomplete scroll, it only moved for a while before stopping. This is a scroll made of a special material. When Guji saw the situation, it was indeed confirmed, just as he guessed, and he said solemnly, I can now be sure that this is a long-lost blue book of Cloud Ninja Village. Blue book. Mingshan was very surprised when he heard it. What is that? This was a special ninjutsu scroll unique to the Cloud Ninja Village that was used to preserve and transmit some secret information. Guji explained the origin of the blue book to Mingshan and was quite surprised. I didn't expect that I would be able to see this kind of thing again in my lifetime. Then he was filled with emotion. Since the end of the Second Ninja World War, it seems that no one in the Cloud Ninja anymore knows how to make this kind of blue book. No way. So exaggerated. Mingshan was speechless when he heard it. How come Fang Zhu can pick up such a weird thing wherever he goes? He threw half a page back on the table, his thoughts wandering. Should I say that he is extremely lucky, or that his character is too amazing? He can just help a little girl on the street. Guji was about to continue talking when he found that Mingshan was distracted. His mind was not listening to him at all, but thinking about other things. Seeing this, the old man was not angry, but just smiled bitterly, raised his voice a little, and shouted at him, Mingshan? Ah. Oh. Mingshan was suddenly pulled back to reality by his voice. He scratched his head with a rare blush. Sorry old man, I was a little distracted. Oh, it's okay. Old man, why do you know so much about the special blue light book of the Cloud Ninja? Guji heard this, stared at the half page with the candlelight on the table, and continued. During the Second Shinobi World War, I had the honor of following the 3rd Hokage to act together. In a surprise battle with the Cloud Ninja, I accidentally got this blue light book from an important target. The 3rd Hokage demonstrated in front of me how to remove this special seal after the battle. I see. Under the candlelight, the text on the page will glow slightly, and it is difficult to detect if you don't pay close attention. In addition, the material of the green light book is different from other ordinary scrolls, so it is very easy to distinguish it from the appearance. Oh, I see. Mingshan nodded in agreement with Guji, but he was complaining in his heart, this broken book, I really don't feel that it is any different from other ordinary scrolls. Of course, he just said this casually in his heart. Grandpa, how many books of this kind were there at that time? Mingshan asked him another question. Not many. Guji shook his head. It's just some extremely important confidential matters that need to be recorded in encryption, so they will be specially recorded. Well, if that's the case. Mingshan opened his mouth and only said halfway and then stopped because he thought of someone. On a whim, he told Guji to wait for him in the room for a while, and then he ran out to find the fat man. He thought to himself as he walked, if I had known that there was such a secret hidden in that broken thing, I should not have returned the scroll to Fang Zhu. Mingshan ran straight out of the yard. Under the dim light, he caught a bald donkey and asked about Fang Zhu's whereabouts. Unfortunately, most of the monks in the temple were not familiar with him, so they had no way of knowing where he was now. TSK, this fat guy, he usually appears quietly. Once I really want to find him, I can't find him at all. He looked around the temple in frustration. The place was not big, but he couldn't find anyone. TSK, where can I go to find him now? The vision is so dim that I can't even see him clearly. Oh, forget it. Or, just when Mingshan was about to give up and stop looking for Fang Zhu, he sighed on the way back, and suddenly, oh, if I had known it would be like this, I wouldn't have eaten so much cabbage and tofu. My feet are numb from squatting. Mingshan was speechless and stunned, and turned his head to look at the toilet on the side of the road. Bang! The door was opened from the inner room, and a fat man who was not tall was busy fiddling with his belt. Fang Zhu. Hey, who is it? He heard the voice, and just when he was about to raise his head to talk to the person who came, his belt was grabbed by Mingshan's hand. He picked up Fang Zhu and ran straight to his bedroom. Hey. Fang Zhu looked at Mingshan in a daze. What's going on? Mingshan, why are you pulling me? Don't talk yet, I'll explain it to you when we get there. Mingshan was too lazy to explain to him, so he picked up Fang Zhu and took him to his room at an accelerated speed. It took a while for the two of them to rush back to the outside of the house. Fang Zhu was confused by him and asked him speechlessly, what are you going to do, Mingshan? Take out that broken scroll and come into the house with me. Fang Zhu was confused for a moment. Although he didn't know what he was going to do, he still did it honestly, took out the scroll, and followed Mingshan into the house. You're back so soon, Mingshan? A strong old man's voice sounded in the house. Hey, who are you? Fang Zhu looked at the man at the table uncertainly. Is it Senior Guji? While asking, he adjusted the frame of his glasses. Hey, hello, Master Fang Zhu. Guji greeted him with a smile. I don't deserve it, Senior Guji. Fang Zhu quickly waved his hand modestly and said, Fang Zhu, don't stand there, come over here. Mingshan took the scroll from his hand and signaled Fang Zhu with his eyes and sat around the lamp table together. Oh, okay. Fang Zhu followed him to the table and sat down in confusion. After Mingshan pondered for a moment, he gently spread out the scroll with both hands, carefully pieced together the half page he had torn off, and then injected chakra into the paper. The turbulent characters on the paper, which were originally extremely yellow, gradually became lively after being activated by the infusion of chakra. Fluorescent light was flowing everywhere in the characters, flashing faster and faster until they gradually intertwined and merged. But, so bright. Fang Zhu was dazzled by the characters and had to block the light with his hands. Ming Xian was not much better either. He and Guji were dazzled by the light beam and simply closed their eyes. After a while, Beiyao disappeared without a trace, and the three of them slowly opened their eyes. Guji was the first to open his eyes and look at the scroll after the white light passed. After taking a quick look at the general content, he was very surprised and said, "The various secret techniques of the first Hokage." What? Ming Xian and Fang Zhu heard this and opened their eyes at the same time and leaned over to take a look. This is really. Ming Xian just glanced at the new title of the book and he trembled and muttered for a long time without saying it completely. Seeing him like this, Guji didn't feel too surprised. After all, he was still a child. To be honest, anyone who suddenly saw such amazing content would be shocked for a long time and would be stunned there. Just when the old man took the initiative to speak to comfort him, "It's okay, Ming." Bang. How abominable. Ming Xian suddenly slammed the table hard, and even Fang Zhu, who was standing there in a daze, was startled. He came to his senses and looked at him with a strange expression, cursing. "I thought this bastard would explain in the scroll where he hid his private money, but in the end, he didn't mention anything at all. Hey, is that all you care about?" Fang Zhu and Guji were both stunned by his sudden nonsensical and shocking remarks. That, Ming Xian, have you got the wrong focus?" Fang Zhu couldn't help but complain to him for the first time. "This is the secret technique of the first Hokage. Can secret techniques be used to make a living?" Ming Xian rolled his eyes at him and said unhappily, "Have you forgotten what I said before?" He choked the fat man. "Didn't I make a big scene in that hotel on Fang Fang Street, and I still owe the owner a lot of money?" He picked his ears with his little finger with a dull look. "The captain and the others just helped me repay part of the debt in an emergency. To be honest, I haven't dealt with this matter yet." Guji looked at Ming Xian, who was chattering like a landlady, and shook his head speechlessly. "Ming Xian, I really admire you. What's the matter, old man?" Ming Xian asked in surprise when he saw him suddenly say this. "Others would be so happy to see some secret ninjutsu, but you don't care at all?" "That's right." Fang Zhu didn't respond to Ming Xian, but followed Guji's words and said, "I remember that you are a wood escape ninjutsu. If you can use these secrets, learning these things is too troublesome." Ming Xian shook his head and muttered, "If I have time to learn these boring things, I might as well stay at home and read adult. No, entertainment magazines or something, it would be better." "Hey, you really are." "Hey." Fang Zhu and Guji looked at each other, shook their heads, and sighed in their hearts, and felt sorry for their lack of struggle. "Well, it's already very late now. I should go back and rest early to prepare for tomorrow's journey." Guji turned his head and looked outside, and then came back to his senses, and said this to the two of them. "Hey, old man, please sit for a while." Hearing that he was going to go back, Ming Xian subconsciously asked him to stay. "Oh, let's not do it." Guji directly refused him. "I'm old now, I can't stand the tossing and turning of staying up late. I should go back to bed." Fang Zhu yawned. "I've been busy all day today, and now I feel so sleepy." No. I was planning to go back to bed after using the toilet, but as soon as I came out, you dragged me here by force." Fang Zhu said with resentment. Ahem. Ming Xian pretended not to hear his protest and was about to persuade him a few more words. "Let's go." Guji had already walked straight to the door of the room. When he was about to take a step out, he seemed to think of something, turned around quickly, and said to Ming Xian, "Tomorrow, if you don't want to go to bed so early, you can read the contents of the scroll carefully, just to kill time." "Read? Yeah. Yes, I thought so too. The old man is right." Fang Zhu pushed his glasses. "Anyway, this scroll is of no use to me. You just stay and think about it yourself." "Okay, I get it. Thank you, Fang Zhu. Good night, Ming Xian. Let's go. See you tomorrow morning." "Yeah." Take care, you guys. After watching them leave at the door, Mingshan closed the door and said to himself in great confusion, TSK, after all this time, I have been messing around with this broken secret technique. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but curse out a classic junior high school English phrase, shit. Was this something the teacher taught him? Mingshan had forgotten it all. Although it was a little embarrassing, it didn't affect him at all. He wanted to say this sentence to express his feelings at the moment. Forget it, since it's already been cracked, I'd better take a look at the content. Otherwise, I'd be too crazy. After muttering to himself, he sat at the table, fiddled with the wick and added oil, calmed down and read carefully from the beginning. The person I hate most in my life is actually Master Hashirama Senju. Mingshan stared at it blankly, his eyebrows twitching, feeling that something was wrong with the content. What about the agreement not to pass on the secret skills? After a while, time passed, he shook his head, secretly suppressed the doubts in his heart, and after adjusting himself, continued reading. Lord Hashirama has always been approachable, and is deeply loved and supported by everyone, but unfortunately, he is a bad boy who is addicted to gambling. Every time he secretly finds an excuse to go to the gambling house, he has to drag me along, which is really annoying. When Mingshan saw this, he couldn't help but said to the book, hey, how much do you hate him? Every time he gambles to the end and has no money in his hands and wallet, he always shamelessly asks me to borrow money. It would be fine if he just borrowed, but after borrowing, he never pays me back. His family is obviously very rich, but he has never paid me a penny. It's really shameless. Ahem. Mingshan couldn't read it anymore after reading the rest and complained to the scroll. Fuck, how much resentment do you have towards the first Hokage that you need to encrypt and record these crappy things? Thank you. Late at night. Book friends 2018121143355948 and Pangu 1 Chai and Wang, the two brothers for voting for support these days. Chapter 198 Secret Technique. When he saw this, he was going to put the scroll away and throw it away, but, hey, there's more here. Mingshan happened to see a long paragraph of small characters written on the edge of the scroll, which obviously recorded other different contents. He gave up the idea of throwing it away. Could it be that what is recorded here is? After carefully reading a small paragraph of text, Mingshan's face was stretched to the point of being so angry that he couldn't help but stand up, pointing at the scroll and yelling, fuck, you are kidding me. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. The real record of the secret technique is written in such small words, only a ghost can read it clearly. He had an urge to tear up the scroll directly. Dude, you are amazing. This is not a record of the secret technique. It's simply poisonous. The veins on his forehead were bulging. It only wrote a few sentences at the beginning, fooling people by saying that this is Hashirama's secret technique that is not passed on. Looking back, those things that look like the main text are all your complaints about the first generation of Hokage. Only this long paragraph of small words is a real record of the essentials of ninjutsu. Mingshan's tone was like that of a man who was cuckolded by his wife countless times. So corrupt. You are really a talent. You deserve to be an undercover agent for almost 10 years, and no one cares about you. After a long while, he finally stopped. Although he was very reluctant, he still accepted the reality helplessly and muttered, if I had known this would happen, I would have brought the magnifying glass with me. Mingshan still began to read the text diligently and seriously, but after only browsing for about half an hour, he really couldn't bear it anymore, and rubbed his eyes with 2 fingers to relieve his fatigue. In order to avoid damaging his eyesight by reading at night, Mingshan decided to take time out after dawn to read the remaining part carefully and put the scroll away. Hey, it's so late. He walked to the window, looked up at the sky, and was about to reach out and mutter to close the window. Who is that kid? Mingshan suddenly caught a glimpse of a strange boy with grey hair and brown eyes, hurriedly passing through their yard, and felt very strange in his heart. It's so late. Why is he wandering outside here? With a little moonlight, he carefully looked at the boy's back, then shook his head, and didn't think about it anymore. Walked straight back to the bed, undressed and rested. At the same time, at the northern border of the Land of Fire, except for a small group of troops that continued to sneak through the woods to search for the scattered Konoha ninjas, the rest of the troops were rushing all night, heading straight for the town of the Land of Fire closest to the border, preparing to take advantage of the night to capture it unexpectedly. In a certain forest, there were two mysterious ninjas wearing masks, half squatting on the treetops, concentrating and alerting their surroundings. They silently sent out their shadow clones to secretly follow and observe the movements of Konoha and Iwagakure. The patrol captain of Konoha has been confirmed to have died in the battle. After a long time, both of them seemed to have sensed and received the news conveyed by the clones, and exchanged words with each other. Write it in the report later. Yes. The companion nodded, and then asked, what did you gain? Based on what we saw just now, the main force of Iwagakure seems to be heading for the nearest town. What should we do? The companion lowered his head and pondered for a while before saying, before leaving, the main order given by Danzo-sama was to secretly observe the situation of both parties. He did not specifically tell us how to intervene or act according to circumstances. Yes, Danzo-sama did say that. Anyway, the patrol members have already released the falcons to pass on information to the village. Let's just quietly watch the follow-up of all the events in the north and see how they will develop. Okay. One night passed in a flash. At 4:07 in the morning, just as the sky was about to dawn, a crisp bird song sounded and quickly passed by the bedroom window. Tomorrow, I was awakened by this cry in my sleep. Is it daybreak? He stood up and walked to the window, stretched out his hand to open the window, looked up at the grey sky in the distance, and just when he was about to frown and whisper, boom, boom. TSK, it's thundering, the situation is a bit bad. Mingshan carefully observed the sky and estimated that it might start to rain at 6 or 7 o'clock. He just didn't know whether it would be light rain or thunderstorm. Hey, why do I always worry about something and it will come? It's really troublesome. It seems that I will have to travel in the rain with the captain and others later. He kept yawning. Taking advantage of the fact that it was still early and there was no chance of rain, he hurried out to the toilet and then quickly came back to sit at the table and continued to read the stupid scroll again. TSK, to be honest, if you ignore those meaningless nonsense, this guy really did write a lot of useful information. He tried hard to read the small words carefully, muttering to himself, even how Hashirama used the most efficient and quickest way to perform wood release ninjutsu back then is recorded in such an objective and detailed manner. And although there are not many types of wood release ninjutsu mentioned in the text, only 2 or 3, but since he recorded them in the Book of Blowlight, they should not be too bad. After straining to open his eyes, Mingshan continued to read word by word. The wood dragon technique, Kuonru and Chushao, are all cloth bag techniques. TSK, it's a bit convoluted. These techniques are really hard to pronounce. Just at this moment, the sky outside the window became increasingly gloomy. Mingshan sat there, spending about an hour, reading these summaries of the secret would release no less than 3 times from beginning to end. During this time, he also found a new blank scroll from his leg bag, and picked up a pen, to copy the backup of the small characters. Well, that's it. When Mingshan finished writing the last word, he threw the pen and ink on the table, quickly moved his wrist, and let out a long sigh. Now just wait for the ink to be dried by the wind, and then you can roll it up. Mingshan looked at it, nodded with satisfaction, and pressed down the scroll on the table with a few heavy ninja tools to prevent it from being blown away by the wind. I'll go to the well outside to get some water and wash my face. After saying that, he yawned lazily, turned his neck, opened the door and went outside. As soon as he opened the door, Mingshan was stunned to see the old man also drawing water from the well. He actually got up earlier than himself. Wow. When Guji turned around, he was surprised to see Mingshan coming towards him. He was about to raise his hand with a smile, intending to greet Guji. Roar. A very abrupt beast roar, not like a human roar, suddenly resounded in this quiet temple. Could it be? Chapter 199 empty. Damn it, why did he start again? Quick, wake up the others, and stop that guy together. Just as everyone was awakened by the sudden roar, Mingshan looked up and saw red chakra rising from the main entrance of the temple. He was surprised and said, "What's going on?" At this moment, he didn't bother to get water to wash his face and hurriedly ran over with Guji to check. Swish, swish. The two of them quickly jumped to the main entrance of the fire temple and found a young man whose whole body was gushing red chakra like a small storm, rumbling and spinning, and the dust around was blown away by this strong airflow. Roar, roar. His grey hair stood up straight, his eyes were ferocious and white, and it was obvious that he had completely lost his self-awareness. Did this kid eat too many monster cells? Is he going to transform now? Mingshan saw this, his left eyebrow kept jumping, and he cursed and complained nonsense. No. Guji shook his head and said seriously, he didn't eat any monster cells. Now he can't suppress the power of the tailed beast in his body, and is out of control. What? Mingshan was stunned. Tailed beast? He looked at the boy in disbelief. There is actually a Jinchuriki in this fire temple. This, I don't know. TSK. Mingshan turned his gaze back and stared at the boy who was getting more and more violent, thinking to himself, why do I feel that his red chakra is very similar to that of Naruto? Sora. Suddenly, Dilu's voice sounded from behind him. Mingshan turned around and said to the person who was coming towards him, Master Dilu? Huh. Dilu, who was busy looking at the boy, turned his eyes away after hearing the words, and after looking at him, he said unexpectedly, Mr. Guji, Mingshan? He quickly ran to them. Why are you here too? He frowned and advised the two of them, the child is in danger now, you should leave here quickly. Mingshan saw that Dilu wanted to drive them away as soon as he opened his mouth, and he was speechless and embarrassed, and just wanted to say something. Master Dilu, it's not good. Look. A monk beside him exclaimed and guided, Kang is going to go berserk. What? Dilu was shocked when he heard it, and he didn't bother to persuade Mingshan to leave. He quickly led the monks to run straight and surrounded the boy named Kang. No. Mingshan looked at them trying to form some kind of formation, standing around the Jinchuriki, frowning and muttering, TSK, are these bald donkeys stupid? Huh. Hearing this, Guji turned to look at him in surprise. Mingshan, you. Ordinary sealing formations are useless against the tailed beast Jinchuriki in a runaway state. Mingshan subconsciously touched his waist, but touched nothing. Then he remembered that he didn't bring any equipment with him. TSK, I left the Kusanagi sword and waist bag in the house. Roar. Huh? Question mark? Mingshan felt that his feet seemed to be shaking. While there is still time, Dilu, who surrounded Kang over there, was about to command the other monks to jointly activate the sealing formation. Roar! Exclamation mark. Boom. The domineering and violent red chakra suddenly exploded from Kang. As the out-of-control boy yelled, a powerful and surging airflow pushed the monks away violently. Cough. Blood flowed from the corner of Dilu's mouth. He barely withstood the vortex in front of him. There's no other way. Mingshan made a decision in his heart, although I only watched it for one night, I'll try it and see if it's really as recorded in the scroll. Swish. Mingshan moved his body and suddenly flew behind Dilu. Ta. He casually held up his retreating body with his palm. Boom. HMM. A dull touch sounded, and Dilu instantly felt a hand behind him holding him back. He turned around to look at the person, and said in surprise, Mingshan? Yes, it's me, Master Dilu. Mingshan's dull black hair fluttered in the wind and airflow, and said to him, leave it to me. Dilu was stunned at first, and then said angrily, what do you mean leave it to you? Hurry up and go. Now is not the time to make trouble. Kang-hee. Don't worry, Master Dilu, I know what I'm doing. Mingshan smiled at him calmly, and then pulled him behind him, and shouted to the monks, everyone back off, hurry up. Hearing this, the monks looked at Mingshan in doubt. Although they didn't know what he was going to do, they still did it subconsciously and backed away. Mingshan flashed to the side of the young man, and quickly formed a seal with his hands, and shouted, would release, thorn killing technique. Kaka. Kaka. Several vines thicker than human hands burst out from the ground, instantly binding Kang tightly. Dilu wanted to continue to scold him to stop fooling around, But when he saw Mingshan's bloodline ninjutsu, he was so surprised that he forgot to shout, "This would release." The boy looked down and saw that his whole body was wrapped with wooden vines, and he roared and struggled. Hey. Crack. Rap. The vines tied to his body cracked and seemed to be torn apart. Not good. Guji opened his eyes and looked at the vines on the boy. The wood can't hold up. Dilu heard Guji's words and quickly reminded Mingshan, shouting, "Mingshan, get out of here quickly." Would release. Violent spear tree. Mingshan's hands had already formed a new seal at lightning speed. After a low shout, the clothes on his back were torn apart by the bulge, and several slender branches with leaves quickly emerged and rushed straight to the boy, who tried to use the power of the tailed beast to violently shake off the vines. Snap, snap, crack, crack. In the blink of an eye, under the gaze of Jilu, Guji, and other monks, Kang was quickly covered by more and more amazing emerald vines all over his body, leaving only his head exposed, still roaring wildly. I didn't expect that this is the power of wood release. Jilu looked at the lush green forest in front of him that was still expanding and growing rapidly. He was visually shocked by this good show for a long time. He stared at Mingshan's back with very complicated eyes, thinking, what is Mingshan's origin? He can actually use the skills that only the first generation of Hokage can use. Unfortunately, before he could finish his speculation, many exclamations and discussions suddenly sounded on both sides of him. Wow, what a powerful ninjutsu. Kang seems to be suppressed. Why have I never seen that kid's bloodline limit? When did Konoha cultivate such a powerful ninja? Chapter 200, Last minute cramming. Cough. Just as the monks watched Kang being temporarily suppressed by Mingshan, and were getting more and more excited, they were attracted by this sudden cough, and they all turned to look at the source, and couldn't help but say in surprise, "Lord Dilu?" He said to everyone calmly, "Be quiet first. If you have anything to say, it's not too late to discuss it." After Mingshan completely controls Kang. Oh, I understand. Just when Dilu asked everyone to calm down for a moment. Roar! Exclamation mark. The young man suddenly let out a beast cry that was even more angry than before, and then his whole body burst out with more amazing red chakra, venting in front of everyone on the spot. No, not good, Kang. A monk's head was dripping with sweat, and he looked at Kang, who was extremely crazy with a nervous expression. Quick, retreat a little further. Dilu decisively ordered the monks. After hearing Dilu's order, everyone retreated as he said, leaving Mingshan and Kang alone there. The iron seal has already been destroyed by Kang. If there is any mistake, and he escapes outside the temple, the consequences will be disastrous. Dilu looked at Mingshan with worry, and was very uneasy, not knowing whether he could completely control Kang. At this moment, Mingshan, who was in the center of the red chakra pressure, felt it more strongly than the monks. Damn, this technique is really troublesome, and I don't have time to practice it. At this time, his hands were still thinking and studying. No wonder, he had just seen it in the morning, and almost no one had demonstrated it to him. That kind of ninjutsu seal was extremely complicated and difficult to understand, so he had to rely on himself to constantly change and comprehend it. Crack, crack. There were more and more cracks on the wood block. Because of the distance, Guji and Dilu couldn't see what he was tinkering with, so they could only worry from a distance. What is Kuoen's hanging hands? Mingshan's face was full of misery. Although he had almost figured out the hand gestures and seals, he actually forgot how to pronounce the full name of the technique at this critical juncture. What on earth is Mingshan doing? Guji looked at him in confusion, standing there and making gestures. On the other side, the young man, because of the increased speed of the release of red chakra, was about to tear off the branches and vines that had recently covered his body and break free. Oh no. The old man was extremely worried about him and could no longer hold back and shouted at him, "Mingshan, what are you doing? Hurry up." Roar. At this moment, the veins on the young man's face burst out, and his skin was actually scratched by the red chakra, and a lot of blood flowed out and merged into it. Bang. Clang. The vines tied around Kang were finally shattered one after another, and the debris flew. Dilu and Guji shouted at him in surprise at the same time, "Get out of here, Mingshan." Swish. The young man rushed towards Mingshan fiercely, and his right hand tore off the bandage at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was stimulated by the chakra and transformed into a deep red claw. Whoosh. He rushed forward and was met with a roaring and swinging attack. Whoosh. Ha. After hearing the sound of breaking wind, Mingshan, who was struggling to figure out his technique, quickly raised his head. Fuck. Sizzle. Mingshan only had time to curse half a sentence before he dodged to the side, barely avoiding the fatal attack, but unfortunately, his left shoulder blade was torn by him, leaving a shocking bloody mark. Hiss. Mingshan took a deep breath and tried to speed up to dodge the out-of-control boy's rampage attack, and cursed and complained, "It's really a ghost. Why are there so many cheats? Are the kids nowadays so invincible?" Swish, swish. Two black shadows flashed from both sides of Guji. What's going on? Guji turned his head and saw Captain Yeshan, Tikuno. Mr. Guji, what's going on? Tikuno looked at the scene with a puzzled look on his face and saw Mingshan fighting with the strange boy. This is what happened. Kosuke told Yeshan and Tikuno everything that happened when he encountered Mingshan while fetching water from the well that morning. I see. Yeshan nodded. After listening, his face became as solemn as Kosuke's just now. Looking at Mingshan, who was gradually at a disadvantage, he said to the two of them, "Mingshan's situation is very critical now. Captain Yeshan." Mingshan suddenly interrupted him when he was discussing with Kosuke and Tikuno how to help suppress Kang. Yeshan was about to tell Tikuno and Kosuke to cooperate when he heard Mingshan there, dodging the Jinkriki's attack in a panic, while calling him in a calm tone. Although he looked at Mingshan in confusion, before he could speak, Mingshan immediately loudly begged the three of them, "Captain Yeshan, Tikuno, old man, don't interfere, just let me handle it. Hey, isn't this nonsense?" After hearing what he said, even the carefree Tikuno felt that Mingshan was a little too much. He was in a very dangerous situation and was about to scold him. "Trust me." Mingshan only said this to them and didn't say anything else, concentrating on fighting the enemy. Tikuno was patted on the right shoulder by someone. He instinctively turned his head and looked at him. He was surprised and said, "Captain Yishan, what are you doing?" "Trust Mingshan." Yishan actually said to him, "If the situation really deteriorates to the point where it is difficult to deal with, we will help solve it together." But Tikuno wanted to say something else, but Yishan just shook his head and said nothing. His face was very serious. I believe him. Mingshan is not the kind of person who dares to talk nonsense when he is not sure of solving the problem. "Captain Yishan." Guji was very surprised by Yishan's words and asked subconsciously, "Why do you believe that he can solve this matter?" "No reason." Yishan turned his head and smiled at Guji, and then he didn't say anything else, just focused on watching Mingshan and the other two who were entangled. Bang. Cough. Just as they were talking, Mingshan was kicked in the stomach by the boy again. Although he was not injured, he still coughed up some blood instinctively, which flowed from the corner of his mouth. Mingshan hurriedly spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm, grabbed a purple bullet from his leg bag, and threw it to the ground. Bang! A large amount of purple mist gushed out, covering Kang's entire body. Roar! Outsiders couldn't see what was happening in the mist, and could only vaguely hear the beast roar of the young man with his neck tilted back, and at this moment, would release silent killing binding technique. As Mingshan's low roar came, 4 wooden vines thicker than his thighs flew out of the thick fog in an instant, rushing straight towards Kang, who was running wild. Snap. Dap. The moment the vines touched his body, new buds and green leaves immediately grew out, binding Kang tightly and making him unable to move at all. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.